Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So, if you don't know me, if it's the first time you're watching my channel, my name's Vicky Marie. I am based in Spain, in Europe, in mainland Spain, where it is still really hot. It is, it's gone down. It was 31 degrees a couple of minutes ago, or about half an hour ago. It's now 29 degrees. But it's still hot, sultry, just, too hot for me, let's say. So, and let me know where you are in the world. When you're coming into chat or whatever, let us know where you are. We have viewers from all over the world. I chat about crime, mostly true crime, sometimes other things as well. But today, in today's video, I'm going to talk again about this lady, which is Elaine O Hara. And I released a video, I think it was yesterday, about Elaine's very sad case of how she was, what could you even say about what happened? She was a very vulnerable person, let's put it that way, for various reasons. The best thing to do is watch my video about the actual case itself. And no, you will find out in this video, because we're going to listen to this case being talked about. So you will find out in this video what happened to Elaine. But Elaine was a very vulnerable person who was sort of lured to her death, really, by this predator, Graham Dwyer. And what we're going to look at in this video is, because I released the video, a lot of people were interested in it. Some people had never heard of this case before. It is 10 years old. This happened more or less 10 years ago. Some people had not heard of the case before. Other people had heard about it. But a lot of people have reached out to me and asked if I'm going to talk about it anymore, if I'm going to go into any more details about it. So when I saw this interview, in fact, I saw the interview that we're going to look at today as I was researching for Elaine's case, but it's quite a long interview. So, I couldn't put the whole interview in the video that I did, which really the video I did was just to tell Elaine's story. And the reason for telling Elaine's story is it's like a warning to people, isn't it? That how easy it is when you're vulnerable to sort of get involved in situations, and before you know it, you've sort of dug yourself a hole and you don't know how to get out of it. I feel that's what happened with Elaine. I mean, she was a very sad person, an unhappy person. She was lonely. There were things she wanted from life that just didn't seem to happen for her. But having said that, at the time that she was murdered by that twonk, she did seem to be sorting her life out, but she had just come out of a psychiatric hospital for not the first time, let's say. So this Graham Dwyer, he saw her coming, he knew she was vulnerable. Their relationship, they had a relationship, a master and slave relationship that lasted on and off for many years. And Graham, being the narcissist and the control freak that he was, he would never let Elaine go. Every time Elaine tried to break away from their sort of very sick relationship that they had. And Graham was a married man with children. He was like the epitome of respectability, an architect, middle class, leading almost a boring life, really, you know, an average man, you know, just living what seemed on the surface to be a good life, but nothing remarkable. But of course, underneath, behind the scenes, he had this secret life that he was living, where he was not only with Elaine, but he was getting involved in these websites for bondage. He was a master. He was looking for slaves on these websites. But he was more, you know, a lot of people do that. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. It's a lifestyle. It's a sort of a, what's the word? Kink's not even the right word. Some people like that, but it is not dangerous most of the time, you know, which sounds funny, but it really isn't. And but Graham was a little bit different, because he was obsessed with a bit more than BDSM. He was obsessed with blood. He'd done, you know, things that came out that he'd wrote about, and things he'd done practicing what his fantasies on animals. No, real horrible man this is. Hiding under a veneer of respectability, married, 2 children, you know, Mr. Middle class, respectable architect, really. So it's very intriguing case, and it's a warning for people just to be careful who they get involved with. You know, when you go onto these websites, you do always have to be careful all the same, even if, you know, you could probably, he's like a 1 in a million person that you could come up against on one of these websites. But unfortunately for Elaine, she did. And he saw Elaine's, he sniffed out Elaine's vulnerability, and he used it for his own ends. So we're going to have, what we're going to watch is an interview with the Garda that was dealing with this case. Because it's now 10 years on, he's retired, and he's talked for the first time about the details of the case. You know, we looked at it obviously in the video, but he's got obviously the more inside knowledge of exactly what happened. It's very interesting, I think, anyway, because this case, a lot of people outside Ireland might not know about it, but in Ireland it was like, because this is where it happened, in Ireland near Dublin. So it was a massive case. And of course, because of the various sort of, you know, you'll see that he says in this interview, it had sort of the sort of interest that people had in it, because it was like sex, and you know, it was sort of murder, and it was a year before her body was even found. So, you know, there was a lot of intrigue in what had happened to her. You know, it's one of those cases that was very mysterious at the time, but in the end, it's been solved. He's in prison. He had his last appeal rejected last year, so he cannot appeal anymore unless he thinks of something else, because he's always just trying to, you know, he's never showed any remorse. He hasn't admitted that he was guilty, even though there's like video evidence of the things that he did to Elaine, not on the day that he actually killed her, but other times. You know, he liked stabbing, he liked to see blood. You know, he was a really foul, horrible man. But he insists he's not guilty. Of course he's not guilty. He didn't kill Elaine O Hara. He's saying nobody killed her. You know, that she took her own life. I think that's his outlook on it. So, anyway, so we're going to watch the interview, and I'll let that explain to you, anyone who doesn't know this case. Just a little bit of warning, because there are a lot of references to sex, bondage, you know, not very nice things. This might, you know, it's not a nice case. So just to warn you of that, if you think you might be sensitive to those kind of things, probably better not to watch. Okay, so first of all, thank you to everyone for liking my videos, for being subscribers to my channel. Thank you to all of you that are members, especially. Thank you to those of you who've bought me Ko-fis, sent super stickers, emailed me, PayPal me. or left me nice messages. If you've supported my channel in any positive way, thank you so much. And then I want to say hello to you lovely lurkers out there. Lovely lurkers are the people that like to watch but don't like to chat. Hi to loathsome lurkers who are like the trolls, which I don't get many to be honest, but hi anyway. And hi to replay crew. Thank you for watching. There's some people won't catch this live and they'll watch it on catch up. And then I'm going to come into the chat in a minute and say hello to those of you that are brave enough to come into the chat. I'm going to just have a little waffle first. Now, some people like my waffle, some people don't like my waffle. But anyway, if you don't like the waffle, you need to fast forward or maybe just go make a cup of tea or something. It's only a quick waffle. And I just wanted to say, because I actually, this morning, for those of you who watch my channel regularly, you'll know that I've been like a vampire really throughout August. It's just been too hot even to go out. So, though it's cooled a little bit, you know, it's just shows you how hot it was when you're saying that when it's 30 degrees or 33 degrees as it was at one point today. That's cool because we did have 45 degrees a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, I went mad this morning. I actually took the dogs out. We went to the beach. I've been to the beach all through the summer because it tends to, well, it's too hot for a start, but also gets busy, you know, with a lot of tourists. But this is the weekend that all the tourists, be adios, amigos, thank God. And it'll go a bit quieter. So I decided to take the dogs to the beach. 8 o'clock this morning, we were at the beach walking along the front. It was lovely, but do you know what? It was already 24 degrees. At 8 o'clock this morning, it was already 24 degrees. So it was very hot. The sun is relentless. I mean, driving there, you know, honestly, you just can't see because the sun is so low and so fierce. It's difficult to even see where you're going. Oh, hey, Riley, this is one of my dogs. Come say hello. Hello, baby. Anyway, we went, and I'm glad we went. It was lovely walking along the front there. There was a nice breeze. But, you know, while I was there, I did think this is what I had 3 reminders of why I often prefer to be in the house rather than go out. There's so many twonks out there, isn't there? You know what? People just, I mean, I really have this problem with people. Like I sort of half of me, I love people, you know, I love chatting, I love meeting new people. And then there's some people that you just think, oh my God, Riley, stop it. Riley's trying to get me to give him a cuddle instead of do a live. So there were 3 instances of twonkishness just in the sort of half an hour or whatever, 3/4 an hour that I was actually at the beach. So the first one was there was a man, you know, so a lot of people, it's like a front, like an esplanade, a promenade, whatever you call it. And people walk up and down it, you know, obviously. And there was a guy, he was walking backwards. It's like, why? Why? So bearing in mind, there's quite a few people on this promenade. So he's walking backwards. He can't even see where he's going. So everybody else is just walking up and down, up and down. He's walking up and down, but he's walking backwards. So everyone's got to move out of his way because he can't see where he's going. So if they don't move out of his way, he's just going to whack into people. It's like those people that swim backwards in the swimming pool and don't even look where they're going, and everybody has to dodge out their way. So he was first twonk. I wanted to sort of go up to him and say, why are you doing that? You know, what, you know, what's wrong with you? So he was the first twonk. Then there was another twonk, which was a lady who was doing yoga on a bench. Now, she's perfectly entitled to do yoga on the bench if she likes, but bear in mind, there's lots of people around and dogs, not only my dogs, you know, so why was she doing yoga on a bench? So the dogs, not my dogs, actually, I stayed well away from her, but other people's dogs were like running up to her. while she's trying to do, I don't know, the whatever they call it, the lotus flower, or I don't know much about yoga. I'm not a lover of yoga, but so I thought, why are you doing it there in public? Because I know, yeah, lovely, do some yoga on the beach, on the bench, but she wasn't on the beach. Like there was no people. She was on one of the benches right on the promenade where everybody was walking past. So to me, just like exhibitionism or, attention seeking. She was probably the wife of the man who was walking backwards. There's the first two twonks. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. Anyway, hey, Rocky, stop it. So my other dog is trying to get, I don't know, he's probably one piece of dog food behind the cabinet. He's trying to scrabble his way to get it. Anyway, so talking of dogs, so the third twonk was a woman with a little dog. It was a beautiful little dog. It was a tiny little toy poodle, a white toy poodle. It was a beautiful little dog. But she didn't have it on a lead. So all right, fair enough. Sometimes I don't put my dogs on a lead, but I did have them on a lead this morning, just in case, because there was a lot of people. There's still quite a lot of people, even though it's not as busy as it was. So this little poodle comes running straight up to my dogs. Now, my dogs, luckily, they like other dogs. Especially Rocky loves other dogs, and they're not aggressive or anything like that. But I just thought, if I would have been with the German Shepherd, because I've got, those of you know, I've got 3 dogs. The German Shepherd, she doesn't like other dogs. So if I would have been walking up and down that front with my German Shepherd, Tia, Princess Tia, and that lovely little poodle would have come running up to her, she would have just been like a Scooby snack for my dog, because my dog doesn't like other dogs. But she would have got into trouble, or I would have. But if I had her on a lead, and this little poodle, and this woman just let the poodle come running up to my dogs, but she didn't know if my dogs were okay or not. And even though my dogs aren't that big, they were twice the size of this poodle, because this little white poodle was so tiny. And this woman just stood there and let her run up to my dogs. And I'm thinking, right, well, luckily for you, my dogs aren't aggressive. But I've got my dogs on a lead. She wasn't even shouting it back or, anything. Just let it come running up to my dogs. And just lucky for her, my dogs aren't aggressive. But I just thought, there you go. There's 3 twonks. There's 3 reasons why I hate leaving the house sometimes. I just think, what's wrong with people? If I've got my dog off the lead, and I do sometimes, I don't ever let Riley off the lead because he'd never come back. But sometimes I let Rocky off the lead because he's really good at coming back. If you shout him, he'll come right back to you. But if I let him off and he goes running up to a dog that's on a lead and that dog bites him, that is my fault, because I'm the one who's not controlling my dog. But a tiny little white poodle like that just come running up. Oh, anyway, never mind. Just. But I think the twonk of the morning was the guy walking backwards. So somebody tell me why he was walking backwards. Twonks are everywhere, aren't they? Okay, let's have a look who's in chat. Now, there's a lot of chatting going on, but I don't think there's that many people, just all between yourselves. Hi, David. Windy and warm in Scotland. Hi, Yvonne. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, David, might be spinning the roulette wheel, but really you're always spinning the roulette wheel, aren't you? Whenever you have a relationship, and not only women, men as well, but website, the thing about the internet is you don't know anything about, you might meet someone down the pub who your mate knows or your family know, or some people know their background. But when you're on the internet, you actually don't know anything about them, do you? And in fact, they can say anything. You know, they don't have to be telling the truth because you've got no way of checking it out, is it? But a lot of people, I mean, this is the way people meet nowadays, though, David, you know, that's what they do. That's life. And lots of people have met on the internet, made good relationships, got married, all that kind. You know, I know lots of people that have done that, and you know, but you've just got to be careful. You know, that's it. But I feel with someone like Elaine, because she was so vulnerable, you know, but it happens to men as well, of course, and boys, girls, everyone. You've just always got to be careful. I admit. Yeah, if you're if you're a bit savvy, you know, you is like some people would see it a mile off, wouldn't they? Yeah, like you say, scammers, just people that are like, you know, a lot of people say they're not married, but they are. I mean, they just reinvent themselves, don't they? I think he was honest in that sense to Elaine, to be fair, you know, trying to be fair, not sure why. But Elaine knew he was married. She did know he was married. So he had been honest about that. You know, he hadn't said he wasn't. And he told her he had children. I think he was sort of quite specific. You know, don't think he sort of, what's the word I can say? I think he told her what he wanted. You know, I don't think he was saying, you know, like you might get someone who'd lure you to a hotel room, not telling you that they were obsessed with stabbing women. I mean, Graham, he was open in his messages and everything about what he wanted to do. But of course, that wouldn't have happened instantly. Like I think I said in the other video, wouldn't be the very first conversation they have. He says, "Oh, you know, I want to kill a woman one day." This would have developed over time, but he did tell her. But then, of course, she did try and break away from him many, many times, but he just wouldn't let her go, would he? And she was vulnerable. Hey, Joanne, gosh. I was just going to say, it must be because Joanne's in Australia, so 2:35 in Australia. Yeah. Yeah. Yvonne. And this is what happened to the German Shepherd's Princess Tia. She got attacked by another dog. She used to be fine with other dogs. And you could take her. She's a dog that you could, you know, years ago when I used to take her out, I wouldn't put her on a lead because she was harder to walk when she was on a lead because she's so strong anyway. She never left your side. You know, she never left your side. You never had to worry about her with other dogs because she just wasn't interested in other dogs. All she was interested in were you throwing rocks for her. You had to, that's why she got renamed Rocky. My son calls her Rocky because she just, God, and she's actually broken her teeth because she would pick up these massive rocks and walk around with them. But then she got attacked. She got attacked by a dog. I think she's been attacked by 2 other dogs, actually. And now you couldn't trust her with other dogs. So there you go. I know, especially if you've got a little tiny, I mean, it was a beautiful little dog, a little poodle, little toy poodle, little cute poodle. You know, but any dog, you know, it wouldn't stand well, I tell you, our German Shepherd would have just, as I say, Scooby snack time. A Fox Terrier, Joanne. Yeah, I had a Jack Russell that was an escape thing. Twonks everywhere, yeah, twonks everywhere. Walking backwards. Come on. Walking back, so everyone's got to move out of his way. You know, to me, it was just like, oh, look at me, I'm walking backwards. You know, you've all got to move out of my way. So he's not bothered who he's walking into. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just, He's probably a bit like Graham Dwyer. He's probably one of them characters. Probably one of them characters. You know, yeah, probably he's on the website looking for a slave. Or he's probably on the websites looking for a slave who'll come walking with him and look out, see if anyone's in his way. Oh dear, I don't know. There's naught so queer as folk, is there? Okay, so let's have a look at this interview. It's a very interesting interview. There's a bit of waffle at the beginning. I mean, it's not waffle really, because it's him talking about his career. Let me just find it. What we're done with it? Oh, I've lost it, no doubt. I always lose when I prepare things, don't I? Where's it gone? Right, found it. So this is the first time that this Garda, that was like the lead investigator on the case, first time he's spoken was a couple of months ago, 10 years on from when the actual horrible murder of Elaine. So I just want to give credit. This is I think it's the Irish Mirror. I've given them credit in that, so I'm hoping they won't copyright strike me. They shouldn't, because we're just reacting to it. But anyway, let's have a look.
We're joined today by Peter Woods, very experienced, recently retired Detective Sergeant with Garda Síochána. He's worked many infamous cases, but we're here today to talk to him about the murder of Elaine O Hara at the hands of Graham Dwyer. So, Peter, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome, lads. Yeah.
We had to persuade you.
You did.
You are, and we'll get into this, you were what was called a level 4 interviewer in the Garda Síochána. So you interview people as part of, that was your speciality. Do you like being interviewed? Have you been interviewed before?
No, don't like being interviewed.
So the tables are being turned.
yeah. No, don't like it when it's like this.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the Elaine O Hara and Graham Dwyer trial. It was 10 years ago this week that Dwyer was jailed for life for the murder of Elaine O Hara. Now, he was convicted after a really sensational trial in March 2015, and you were part of the team, but you were one of the central figures involved in this trial. As we will get into, you were the detective sergeant with Jim Mulligan, the detective Garda, who interviewed Dwyer, who arrested Dwyer at his home and interviewed him for 24 hours straight. And you give very, very compelling evidence in the trial. So that's what we're going to talk about. But we might just, before we get into that, can we just talk about, you did 32 years in the Garda Síochána. Why did you join the Guards, first of all?
Well, I suppose from a young age, I always wanted to be a guard. I remember there was a robbery out beside me, and there was a local guard preserving the scene of a car, and I was able to tell him about the suspects running away from it. I think I was only about 7 or 8 at the time. And I suppose he impressed me at the time. It was always in my mind, and it just came up. Life has a way of dealing with things, and it came up at the right time, and I applied and I got in and joined in 91.
And would it be fair to say you spent most of your time in the detective branch?
Yep. Yeah, I always wanted to be a detective. So I was a guard in the Bridewell Garda Station for probably 2 years initially. Then I went to the Crime Task Force in the North Central, which wasn't detective, but it was kind of detective based. They were great times, working around this area in Store Street, Mountjoy, Fitzgibbon Street, and the Bridewell. And did 2 years with that. I came back.
He seems like a lovely guy, this guy, Peter. But, I think if you've been a detective like that, dealing with these cases and stuff, retirement must be really difficult, I think. What do you do? Because police work, especially detective work like this, it's like full on, isn't it? Really full on. I mean, he'll give you an idea of this during the interview. And then suddenly when you're retired, it's hard, isn't it? Retirement's hard for a lot of people. depends if you've enjoyed your job or not, isn't it? Some people can't wait to retire, can they? It's like, God, there's some people work to live and some people live to work, don't they? And, if you really enjoy your job, you wouldn't want to retire, really, would you? Whereas if you hated your job, you can't wait.
To the Bridewell then, worked with the detective unit in the Bridewell. We had some great cases there. Learned an awful lot in the Bridewell. It's great station, great place to be. There's great people in it. And then I got promoted and went out to DMR East, which you might think it's a nice and handy spot out there.
Leafy Blackrock.
Yeah, leafy Blackrock. Some say it is, but when you get the big cases, you get the big cases. And I did a less than a year in uniform, I think, out there, and I was appointed to a detective sergeant, and that's where I moved around to some of the stations in the Damer East, and from Dunleary, I was in charge of the drugs unit out there, the detective unit in Dunleary and Dalkey, and then I was appointed to Blackrock. That's where I retired from.
Okay, so let's talk about Dwyer, but first I'd like to spend some time talking about probably the most important person in this whole case, and sometimes is forgotten about, and the media are at fault of this, Elaine O Hara.
Yeah.
So, do you think about Elaine much?
Oh, quite a bit, and I'd still be quite friendly with Frank and the family, and absolutely think of her in particular every August. But I think of her regularly. She was a very, very decent human being, trying to get on with her life, trying to live her life independently. She no doubt had difficulties, like everybody has, and she just wanted to be loved. Really, she wanted someone in her life that would love her and take care of her. And she went down a specific route into how she might find love. And I suppose that's how she ended up where she was.
Now, you know what people say, hungry people shouldn't go shopping. And that, I think, is the crux of this whole case. Elaine, she wanted to be loved, bless her. She just wanted, really, I don't know how she ended up on the BDSM sites, but perhaps she just wanted someone to... Think about BDSM, and I really am speaking from experience here. It's like somebody, I don't know, looking for someone to take control. And, when people have got a lot of problems and stuff like that, they go into these master-slave relationships. It takes the pressure off them for making decisions. It's really hard to sort of put into words, but it shouldn't be dangerous. I mean, it sounds crazy because, of course, the whole nature of BDSM, you think, it's like, whips and handcuffs and this, that, and the other. But it's more about letting go of control and trust. There's a lot of trust in it. And, there's, so-called masters or mistresses and slaves. Often the slave has actually got a lot of power because they call the shots as to what happens. Anyway, that's a whole nother video, isn't it? So I wonder if Elaine got involved in this because she just wanted someone to look after it. I don't know how she got involved in it all in the first place. And unfortunately for her, Graham Dwyer was waiting there like a bloody spider, wasn't he, in a web, like waiting to get someone in his clutches. And it wasn't only Elaine. I mean, he had a few slaves, but it's, I think Elaine was the most vulnerable out of them. So as I say, hungry people shouldn't go shopping. You go looking for love and you're going to end up with some twonk like him. If you're so desperate, needy for love, you're going to end up with a twonk, 100%, man or woman. Whereas, you've got to love yourself first, haven't you? You have got to love yourself first.
What do you think?
100% he targeted her. He met her initially on a website, alt.com. And I suppose there are a lot of vulnerable people maybe would use these type of sites. It's a BDSM site. So they had been in contact and they had met for a number of years, and then the contact stopped. And he again made contact with her in March 2011. on a phone that wasn't registered to him.
Is there any idea why the contact ended the first time? Was it 2008?
Well, I suppose we can't say with with any definite reason, but you can see from the messages that he wanted to stab Elaine O'Hara while having sexual intercourse with her. She did not want to be stabbed. She didn't want blood. She didn't want anything like that. Yes, she had things that she wanted, done, but that was not what she wanted. And it appears from the start of the text messages that he wanted to rekindle the relationship so he could get her back under his thumb again.
To kill her?
Well, okay, so from the very, very start...
Sorry, I just want to say. So again, in my experience with narcissistic men, they never let you go. Like they may, I'm not talking about in this sort of circumstance. I've not been in this sort of circumstance, but, they go when they want to. And then, especially if they get wind that you might be seeing somebody else or you might have met somebody else, they're back, then they'll do anything to get you back. Because even if they don't want you really for a long-term relationship, they certainly don't want anyone else to have you because they want to think you're just there waiting for them when they decide to pick it up again. And I have had a relationship like that went on for nearly 20 years, to be honest. And you sort of wise up in the end, because at first I think you start off like, loving them, and then they hurt you because they go off with someone else, or they tell you you're not really for them. And then so you get over it, like you do. People get over it, and you start living your life, and maybe you meet someone else. They get wind of it, and they're back, like because it's like, oh, how dare you, have a life away from me. That's what narcissists do, and Graham was so typical of that because he probably had lots of slaves. Well, he had 2 regular submissives that we know about that he said that he had. And, he would always go probably back on that website, meet another submissive. So he didn't need Elaine in the sense that he couldn't find another submissive, but he needed her because she was the most vulnerable one. And he knew that he could always get round her again. So if she finished it or he finished it, and he would always come back to her, keep her dangling, because he knew she was lonely and she didn't have anybody else, Maybe he got wind sometimes that she did have another master or whatever. Just horrible. What a horrible, horrible man. Really, I think there's not many more men more horrible than this guy.
If you look at the messages, he knew that she was suicidal, and she had asked him at one point to kill her. And from the very, very start, the messages are insidious. I will end you one day. I'll finish your life. I'll help you. I'll bring you to the woods and stab you. There are so many messages from the first master phone to Elaine.
It's awful, isn't it? Because he actually did tell her what he was going to do to her. And Elaine, although she said right from, all the way along, I don't want to be stabbed, I don't want to go along with this. She said that clearly, but she still let him back in. So that's how vulnerable she was, isn't it? Because I've got, I've had some twonks in my time, but I've got to admit, when one starts telling me they want to stab me, I think that, I'd be straight down the police, to be honest. I'd be down the police if a man messaged me and said that. I'd be like straight down the Guardi, as I'm talking Irish now. You can't have that. So he had told her this. But she was so desperate, really. It's so desperation, isn't it? Or to be loved. And I think he was probably nice to her sometimes. I think he must have been. He can't have been horrible to her all the time, because I don't think she would have carried on seeing him. I think every now, she must have been holding out a hope for a child. She wanted a child. You know, she was holding out a hope, and so I'm sure he was nice to her sometimes. Every time he went too far and she ran off, then he probably started being nice to her.
iPhone that talk about killing her, but also about if it wasn't going to be her, it was going to be a woman in the woods that they would wait for. And when I say they, he was trying to get Elaine to help him. Now, Elaine never actually got involved in that, but he was trying to find ways that he could get a vulnerable woman and stab her to death while having sex with her.
See, that's quite stunning when you sit there and, you know, you say this, but when you sit and think about this, it's really horrific that somebody could be of that mentality.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's very scary. You know, it really is. You might say that it was a fantasy of his, and I think that was what was put forward a little bit by his senior counsel in the trial, which, you know, but the fantasy did become a reality, and there's no doubt about that his fantasy became a reality with Elaine, and he had Elaine, I suppose, emotionally attached to him, that he could do what he wanted.
Do you think that he contacted her in March 2011 with a view to killing her?
I do. Yeah, I do. Obviously, he got pleasure from also the sexual aspect of it with using the knife as
Now, an ex-girlfriend of his, not his wife, I don't know, you know, I don't think his wife has ever spoken about, you know, things he asked to do in the bedroom or whatever. But a previous girlfriend of his did say that in the end, he started off all nice and that, and then in the end, he did want to bring a knife into the bedroom. He said, let's spice things up a bit. I mean, you know, spicing things up a bit. You go to Ann Summers and you get a bloody, I don't know, and some sexy underwear or and then go and buy a bottle of vodka or whatever. That's spicing things up a bit. Imagine your partner saying to you, oh, should we spice things up a bit? Be like, oh, yeah. Like, oh, I bring a knife into the bedroom. Like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? A knife? I mean, come on. So, but he did with this first girlfriend. Well, don't know if it was his first girlfriend, but this previous girlfriend of his. And she did escape from him in the end because she said he just started to get really scary, you know. So he was gradually, you know, building up to it with her, but it didn't work. So he was finding these people on these websites who wouldn't be shocked about him talking about knives and that. But I've got to tell you, I think that is rare on a bondage website to talk about knives. And that is not really, knives don't really, you know, that is extreme. I think even on a BDSM website, if somebody started talking about knives and what, it'd be like, you know, the alarm bells would be going off, that's for sure.
As you can see, the amount of times that he met up with her in her apartment. And if you look at the videos, which we found later, now the videos are from a previous time. It's before the March 2011 because we know where they happened. And you can see that he is using the knife and using it, you know, not just, he's getting blood and quite severe stab wounds.
So there were videos that they found on the phones that they found of him and Elaine together in the woods, you know, not the actual final video of her dying, but he had taken her into the woods before and he had stabbed her and he had brought blood up. What, you know, this is what I don't understand. Was she so desperate to please him? Why didn't she go to the police then? Because that is, you know, if you went into the woods with someone for a session like that, and then they produced a knife and started stabbing you and producing blood, and he says there was a lot of blood. You would only have to be a bit, you know, for God's sake, it wouldn't matter to me whether it was a lot of blood or a little bloody spot of blood. Anyone was saying that they want to stab you with a knife, it's like, no, you know. But anyway, So how did he get her to do that? Anyway, but there were videos. So, of course, these helped to convict him because it showed that he'd done these things before, and they could tell from where the videos were taken where they were. You know, they were out in the woods and places, and probably they were wearing all this bloody leather mask and ball gag stuff that they found in the river, in the reservoir. It really is incredible, isn't it, that she would go along with that and then see him again after that. So I think if you went and you got, you didn't realise and that happened, you would never see him again, would you, if you'd managed to survive it?
So look at it. I have no doubt that both things were there for him, that he could use her for his sexual fantasies while stabbing her, while having sexual intercourse with her, but also his ultimate goal was to kill a woman.
So essentially, he groomed Elaine for almost 18 months for murder.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. There's no doubt about that. Yes, there's no doubt about that. He was building up to it, and I can say that from having read the text messages. You can see the text messages constantly talk about his stabbing, rape, murder, the fact that he wanted to kill a woman. He progressed from what he talked about, killing a sheep or stabbing a sheep in Wicklow, and how satisfying it was to see the knife go in and the blood come out.
Yeah, so I've got to say twat here, I think, rather than even twonk, because it's just not doing it for me. He'd actually stabbed a sheep to death to practice first for his enjoyment. Now, serial killers normally start with animals, don't they? He's definitely a serial killer in the making. Now, he may have done this to other women that we don't even know about. Could be sex workers. Sex workers tend not to get discovered, do they? Sometimes their murderers don't get discovered. Now, of course, we've got this vanishing triangle as well in Ireland. Of women that have gone missing and been, did he have anything to do with that? Is this the first woman that is ever killed? Maybe it is. He was saying, to be fair, in the text that he'd like to do it, and maybe he hadn't done it before. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? Had he ever done it before? And he certainly would have done it again. Certainly, 100%. Would have done it again. I wait to he'd written these sort of fantasies about killing women, like journals or stories and things. He was right into it. And in the daytime, he was being a husband, a father, the boring architect. Just like you said, David, just his wife probably thinking he's like this fantastic husband, so attentive. But in the the time when he's not with her, all he's thinking about is killing someone, killing a woman. That's his fantasy. And it overtook him in the end, didn't it? And he would have done it again, 100%.
And how he wanted to do a woman next. And he continued on with that. Those text messages were in, I think it was April or May 2011. He continued on and continued on right up until the 22nd of August, when he laid Elaine O Hara down to Shangana. But there's no doubt that the plan was laid out early, in that he knew Elaine O Hara had been suicidal at one time in her life, and had asked him to kill her. And actually, he admitted that in the interview room at one point, where he spoke about that. But yes, to answer your question in a short way, he did, in my view, he was grooming her for eventually to kill her, yes.
So you did 32 years in Garda Síochána. Have you ever come across anything like that? Someone grooming someone else for murder?
No. Look, I've been involved in, a lot of cases that, including, where fellas have gone after minors for sexual purposes and all that. But I've never seen anything like that.
No.
I don't think there has been, I don't think there's too many of those individuals around here, I think he's very, very unusual and rare.
Two very quick questions. You were telling me before when we were talking about this that one of the first things you do in any case is you get a photograph of the victim and you put it in the file. Did you do that with Elaine?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, in all cases, the victim is at the centre of our investigation. In all cases, it doesn't matter if it's big or small. If I go to a burglary tomorrow, your house is broken into, it's you that I'm trying to, you try your best for the victim. You try your best to get justice for them, If it's a case of property, you try your best to find out who took it and try your best to get it back. It doesn't always happen. But I think for me, the first thing I look for, pictures are looked for by the press, obviously, as well. And because a picture tells 1,000 words, and it always does. But for me, it's to remind myself of this is who I'm dealing with. And it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're a gangland criminal. It doesn't matter who they are. Elaine O Hara, in this case, was a decent, honest human being who was trying to live her life. And I had a picture of it to remind me of. And in the interview room, and I showed Dwyer a picture of her, just to I do that all the time. That's one of the things that I teach in Temple Park, because a picture tells 1,000 words, because what you get a reaction from a picture. Who is this person? Do you know this person? I mean, obviously I'm not going to show a picture of a dead person. This is a picture of them being alive, and they're in a human format. So it's a good thing to have to remind yourself, and also it's a good thing in a homicide. And I say, while I would do it in all cases, in gangland murders as well, I think it's more important in a relationship homicide, if you know what I mean. So if a husband and wife have been killed, I think it's very, very important to have the picture of the wife if the husband has killed the wife or you suspect that, just to have it there to show. And we, in the interview room, you might think it's very cold, but we have conversations about all sorts of things in the interview room. But I use maps and charts and photographs, and I put them up on the wall because I want him, and it usually is him, although I've seen ladies as well, but I want them to look at them during the interview. I want them to engage with the evidence visually and mentally, to see it. I'll put up pictures of phones with the numbers, so they're showing a visual representation of what is happening, because by talking and trying to explain the evidence to somebody, it's much better. It's much better when you have a picture. It tells 1,000 words.
We do want to get to the interview stage. I think it might be good to go backwards to go forwards a little bit, just to sort of talk about the discovery of Elaine's body, obviously on the 13th September. And then I suppose initially it wasn't necessarily believed that she was the victim of murder, but tell us how you got involved in that investigation, and then that key discovery of the materials in the reservoir. In the Archery Reservoir. So if I go back a little bit, in August 2012, Elaine went missing on the 22nd. I think her dad became concerned and went to her apartment. The 23rd, and he reported her missing. I think it might have been the 24th. But the guards became involved, the guards in Stepaside. And over those days, I was aware of the case. I was aware of the missing person. And I became involved in it. At that point, I did a number of searches in Shangana. I was involved because I knew the car had been found down at Shangana. I was there doing checkpoints then at the time when Conor Guilfoyle, the witness who had seen Elaine walking across the park, and there was an incident room set up at that time in Shankill initially, I think, and then it moved to Dunleary because the car had been found in Shankill in Shangana Park at the entrance. I think it was found actually by her brother John, because he went there because Elaine had been visiting her mom's grave
coincidentally, which is at the same location. In any event, I became involved doing the searches and carrying out some initial inquiries in relation to the missing person. And I suppose, like a lot of missing persons investigations, we did go to her apartment and we took the computer. We took her iPhone, which was being charged, and crucially, we took the CCTV footage from the apartment block at the time. Because if we didn't take it, it would have been overridden. And that was crucial to the investigation. But the missing persons investigation did die out for one reason or another. A lot of leads there was a lot of work done on it. The Coast Guard had done numerous searches up along the coast. There was numerous searches done in Shangana Park and in the surrounding areas. Elaine's car was searched. We went through. There were thousands of text messages on the phone and on the iPad. Electronic download was completed. And we did look through the messages and we were concerned by them.
Were there reference to BDSM in those messages?
Yes, okay. yes, and it was very concerning. And
so, from an early stage, this was unusual. Would that be fair to say that the foul play was being looked at even at an early stage?
Well, I suppose it was more like you have to take the context of who Elaine was, and Elaine had just been released from hospital in Lucan St Edmundsbury Hospital, and she had difficulties with her life, and everybody accepted that, including her family. And to say we thought that it was a suicide, not in the early stages. A lot of work was put into it, but it was a possibility. Mm-hmm. It absolutely was a possibility because of the situation, and I suppose. The text messages were very, very concerning, and I remember looking at a lot of them, and we'd done some work around them.
Yeah, I think as well, Graham relied on that. He knew that she had this history and that she'd just come out of a psychiatric hospital. And he thought, the way he set it all up, isn't it? He thought that it would just get presumed that it was a self-deletion.
Including around flying. To try and identify the person that was sending these text messages from the 474 number to Elaine O Hara's iPhone. But the investigation sort of, I suppose, it petered out as time went on. Other things came when there was no body, and there was nothing further to indicate where Elaine may have been. So,
say after 6 months, and that's, by the way, that's really interesting that the guards had the text messages. It's really interesting that, and the BDSM, was established, because that really only emerged publicly after it became a murder inquiry. So in September 2013, it really exploded. But say after about 6 months, would your view, or the team's view, the incident room's view, have been, look, it's more likely than not that this is a suicide?
I think that's fair to say. I think that is fair to say. I would have seen lots of cases where people had gone into the sea, and we would still carry out all the inquiries and look to see where, check their bank accounts, check their phones, check all the records, see is anything coming up, anything in their history, and try and establish where they are. But we have had, I know myself where people have gone into the sea and they've ended up in the UK quite often. It's happened a couple of times, and I suppose.
God, that's amazing, isn't it? People have gone into the sea and ended up in the UK. Crikey. Dear me. So sad, isn't it?
It's very, very difficult for the families when the body isn't found. Look, it's very difficult when she goes missing. She, like Elaine was much loved by her family. It wasn't that she had full interaction, and she was a fantastic aunt to her little kids. She loved the kids. She was a very warm person with children. She used to work with kids in school, and she also worked in a shop. She was a hard worker. But I suppose there was a general acceptance that there was a good possibility that she had gone into the sea, being that we could put her at the railway bridge going down to the shore from the witness. So
13th of September, which there's a series of coincidences in this case, and that was Graham Dwyer's 41st birthday, I think. And
Yes.
around 7 o'clock, I won't say who he was with, but he was out having dinner at around 7 o'clock, when I always remember Garda Alan Young was the first Garda.
Now, I don't know why he says I won't say who he was with. He was with his wife because they both had the same birthday. Both their birthdays was the 13th of September. 13th of September, very significant in this story, because, yeah, as he was having, remember this was in the other video that I made of it, they were out having a Mexican dinner in a Mexican restaurant at the same time that the police were discovering. He didn't know that night he was enjoying his birthday dinner with his wife. Let's have a look at his wife. And I feel for her, Gemma. Her birthday the same day, 13th of September. They were out having a Mexican dinner and that not knowing that everything was just about to, he's probably thinking it's been a year. He's never going to get found out. He's living his best life, isn't he? With his wife and his kids, and thinking he'll never get found out, probably planning his next one. And he didn't know that it was all about to come crashing down. So this guy said, I don't want to say it was with, I don't know why, because I think it's well known who he was with his wife.
He was from Rathfarnham, I believe.
Yeah.
So when Dwyer was out for dinner, Garda Young was essentially responding to the scene at Killikee Woods after Magali Vernier, the lady whose dog found the remains.
Yeah.
That's just a massive coincidence. What changed it for you in the investigation team from
this is
a death to a murder?
Hang on, sorry. So this is the lady, the dog walker, the dog trainer that was walking the dogs. You know what? It's always a dog walker, isn't it? She was the one that found the bones. So all seemed to happen all at once. It was funny, really. It's almost like, sometimes I wonder, do like people, who've passed on, or has God got a hand in this, if you like, because it all happened all at once. So for a year, nothing. And as the policeman, Peter, said, other things come up and there's no new developments, and wasn't as if they didn't care about Elaine, but just other things were going on. And then suddenly, within the space of just a few days, the items are found in the reservoir. Remember all those BDSM items found in a bag in the reservoir by these guys who were there fishing. Oh, sorry, not them. Oh, I've got the wrong. These guys. That's him. That's Twonk. These guys fishing at the reservoir. And found that bag that had all the items in it. And then within a couple of days, this lady, Magali, she finds the bone. Now, her dog had already brought back a couple of bones over the past few weeks. But this time, the dog brought back a bone with clothes on it. And that's how she knew that it probably was human remains, and that's why she went to the police. So it all happened all at once. And as he's having his birthday dinner with his wife, the joint birthday dinner, it's all happening in the background. It's incredible, really.
Well, I suppose I probably wasn't aware on the 13th, but we would have been aware in the day following that a body had been found. But even at that point, it wasn't on our radar that it was Elaine O Hara. But it became more when the pathologist and the forensic anthropologist reports came in that it was a female, and she probably was in her 30s, and the description certainly fitted Elaine O Hara. Then they made contact with us because they were checking. So I think initially dental records were used to identify the body, and that happened, I think it was on the 17th, around the 17th.
Yes, because, and another coincidence, I called to Mr. O'Hara's house on the 16th of September. Now, he was very, you knock on doors, you get different reactions. He was a lovely man and he was very civil. He just said, look, we're playing a waiting game. But on the 16th, And perhaps this is what elevated the whole thing. On the 16th, while I was calling to Mr. O'Hara's house, Garda James O'Donoghue was down on his hands and knees in Vartry Reservoir. And what he found there, including the key fob that was for Dunstores that linked to Elaine O'Hara, and then the later findings of the phones, did that raise it up?
Oh, look, without a doubt. I suppose the first thing, if we deal with it initially, when the body was identified, or when it was really heading towards that it was Elaine O'Hara, that really raised alarm bells. You know, how did Elaine O'Hara get to the Dublin Mountains when her car was in Shangana? And our last sighting of her was in the park heading for the bridge. So that was, you know, there's no doubt that at that point, really suspicions become there's something else involved here. So James O'Donoghue finds the items in the reservoir. Maybe before the 16th they were found. I think the fishermen were found.
On the 10th.
Yeah, and Mark Quinn and the 3 guys on the bridge. And, you know, a beautiful location up there in the Vartry Reservoir looking across. And here they find these items, you know, that I suppose they knew there was something wrong about it. They knew there was something wrong.
Well, I think when you think about it, Elaine's car is in Shangana, Elaine's remains are in Killikee, and Elaine's key fob and various other items are in Vartry, I think about 30 kilometres away.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously that's a real red flag.
But and it was key to her Fiat Punto, and she had driven the Fiat Punto to the Shangana, and we knew that because we had it on CCTV. Going in that general direction, and we seen her leaving her apartment. So absolutely, that raised a red flag. But you're not there yet. You know, you like in a murder, and there's murder and there's manslaughter. We had to prove who killed her, and I think that came into place later. But you also have to prove the intent. You know, which is, you know, you have to prove that they intended to kill or cause serious harm to the victim. So all those things come into your mind, like, you know, how are we going to establish this? How are we going to move this forward? But the find in the Vartry Reservoir was hugely significant. It really was. And the key fob, I suppose, was the one that led James O'Donoghue to contacting Detective Sergeant Tom Forsyth, who was in charge of the initial missing persons investigation. So that's what happened. I went up there myself on the 17th of September with a number of other people, and I seen the phone in the water. The phone was still in the water when I was up there, the first phone, and there was a key, but there was. So normally in the reservoir, which is also very coincidental, there's normally 20 to 30 feet of water on the bridge. And if you went up there now, you'd see that. But in 2013, it had been a very hot summer, if you recall. And the level of the water had dropped right down to, there was a small stream running through the bridge, just under the bridge. But when I say a small stream, there was also silt and mud and all that around. So it was very difficult. I remember the scenes, the crime man was standing there beside us, and Dermot O'Sullivan, the chief superintendent, was with us, and myself and Brian Duffy, and I think Jim Mulligan might be with me as well. And he said, if I go in there, I'm going to lose this, muddy the water. So he got a shovel and he stuck it in and he lifted the phone out. He got another few items as well, but the phone was the most significant thing. The first phone, and that phone was brought to.
Do you imagine it? It reminds me a bit of the Samantha Murphy case. They've got her phone, haven't they? And like he says, he didn't think they'd be able to get anything off the phone because they didn't know how long it had been in the water. It looked like it'd been there in there, you know, length of time. Well, of course, she'd been missing a year, but they did get into it. And yeah, all those things, the bag, finding the bag with the stuff in it, which made them look further, finding the phones, the dog walker, the dog trainer, the dog finding the bones, and they all happened at once. It's quite strange, isn't it? As he was enjoying his birthday treat. It's like It's like maybe Elaine had something to do with that, or God had a hand in it. It's like the combination of everything, the hot summer, so the water was more dried up than normal. Everything conspired. So it just shows you, and the police say this, don't they? He has to be lucky every day. Well, any criminal has to be lucky every day. We only have to get lucky one day. But actually, in this case, they got lucky several days over a short period, didn't they? All these things just happened all at once. I think it's really, because her finding the bones, it's completely, nothing to do with them finding the stuff in the water. Do you know, like completely different places, they're not related in any way. Whereas obviously the police went to the reservoir and looked further, and that's why they found the phones, because of the bag being found. But the dog trainer finding the bones is completely unrelated, but it all happened over the same period of time. It's like everything caught up with Graham Dwyer all at once. It's brilliant.
Niall Duffy up in Garda headquarters, and like phone being in the water. I mean, I suppose we didn't know at that stage. You don't know. You don't know what evidence you have. You really don't know where something's going to lead to you. But to get that phone working was unbelievable.
What went through your mind when you saw the phone?
Well, I saw it was a small Nokia phone, and I did believe that, because I knew what I knew. You see, when you look back at things now, right, you have to remember that we didn't have the full picture at the time, but we had a body that we believed was Elaine O Hara. I don't think she was definitively identified, but we were fairly happy that it was her. We had the items, the keys, which were definitely hers. So these other items were very, very likely hers. But did I think that we were going to get the phone going? Not really. So we'll give it a shot. Not really, to be honest, because I knew it had been in the water for some considerable time.
But you did?
Yeah. We brought it to, and Niall Duffy, he had to do that phone was found initially. That was the 151 phone, Elaine's phone. But the underwater unit did 2 searches up there. They got down into the mud and the muck. They got their wetsuits on. It was up there the first day when they were there, and they found other items, and they found the second phone. And that one was also found. That's the 076 phone, the second master's phone.
The master, yeah.
And the text messages on both phones, I think there was 250 text messages. It showed that they were exclusively in contact with each other than maybe a 1740 or other than that, they were exclusively in contact with each other, and that showed the time they were bought, and all the messages leading up to the 22nd of August 2012 directing Elaine O Hara down to the shore and wait. When we had the first set of messages showing the BDSM activity, we had a lot of information there showing that somebody wanted to stab a woman to death, but the actual plan is laid out in the text messages between the 076, the master phone, and the 151, the slave phone that was found in the reservoir. He talks about you're going to get a good stabbing, you have to take a punishment, you're going to be out in the woods, take a tablet at 5 o'clock because it's going to hurt. Told her what to wear, what not to bring her iPhone, directed her down to Shangana and how to get to the bridge, and told her to wait for him at the shore.
Now, I know you're in the zone in an investigation, but do you not have a holy crap moment when you read those?
Yeah, but
as a personal level, you're going, it's bizarre is not the word, this is horrific and it's terrible, and people think like this, but surely you go, holy shit.
You do, but you have to remember there's a lot of things going on in an investigation. So it's not just, you're not just looking at the text messages, and you are, but there's all the other things that have to be like you have to bring your case along with you as you're going. So say I know myself, I spoke to Magali Vernier, so I would have met with her. She was traumatized, the poor lady, you know, and a lovely lady.
Oh
You know,
God.
her dog she was just walking the dogs. And the other two guys that came with her, the landowner, Frank Doyle, you have to go and take these statements and interview these people. So I was doing all this as well. You know, you're proving your case as you go along. You're building. You know, these are critical people, and you can't just leave them and look at, you know, concentrate. Now you will have teams, you know, looking at suspects, and it develops. You know, there's a structure to an incident room when it's set up. You know, the senior investigating officer, who in this case is Brian Duffy, detective inspector, you know, he will assign teams to do certain things, but the investigation moves on. So when I say I was looking at the text messages, yes, but there was so many other things going on that you know, identifying the suspect was part of it, but you still have to bring your case. So you have a case ready to go to court. Like, you know, say getting the dental records, you know, you have to prove that they're Elaine's dental records, that you went to the dentist. All these things, you know, the CCTV, these things sound boring, but you've got to take your statement of who turned on the CCTV, who gave you access to it, who you know, who downloaded it, where the footage was, how much of it is. All these things, you need people to gather the evidence around that as well at the time, you know.
But I just want to read out some of the messages. Now, these may be from the other phones as well, but they're just, when you sit and you think and you go, what is going on here? I'm a sadist. I enjoy others' pain. You should help me inflict pain on you and help me.
Yeah, just a little, I just feel I should give an advisory note. These messages, they're foul.
With my fantasies. I want to stick my knife in flesh while sexually aroused. Blood turns me on and I'd like to stab a girl to death. And this is to Elaine, if you ever want to die, promise me I can do it. My urge to rape, stab and kill is huge. You have to help me control or satisfy it. Like, that is completely out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and it was unbelievable. And I suppose when we're in the investigation, you read them and you think, oh my God, you absolutely do. As a human, as a person, you know, even, but you're looking at things, how am I going to identify this guy? How am I going to identify him? And so obviously to get these text messages, Breed Wallace had done fantastic work with, you know, downloading the MacBook computer. And
so, sorry, just to explain a bit, Breed Wallace is a detective Garda, I still think, in computer crime.
She's now detective sergeant, and she's back in computer crime, I believe. Yeah.
So she's an expert on...
Yeah, downloading, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
how important was her, and I think there was another Alan
Brown.
Alan Brown. Yeah. They were really central to that aspect.
But they became central later, maybe after the interviews, more so. I think Breed Wallace would have done the initial downloading of Elaine's computer. But when you say they became central, they absolutely did. But it was after Dwyer was arrested and charged. But there was a lot of work done. Does not stop after that. Like, I'll talk to you about that again maybe later. But there's a lot of work goes on after the charge. It just starts, you know. So, like the proof of everything, you know, everything has to be proved down to every bit of detail. How did you get it, you know?
So,
you might be asking, just was there a particular moment at this juncture? Is it the text messages or what that turned the investigation towards a murder inquiry?
I think when we had the information certainly from the slave phone, it definitely was a murder inquiry. But I think I can't say officially, but I think when Elaine's body was identified, and the fact that she was up in the Dublin Mountains, and at the same time her car keys were found in the reservoir, I think at that point it was there is no doubt that somebody else was involved. How did her keys get to the reservoir from, you know, if you look at it, and we did look at a coal leak at the time, it had to be, you know.
So Elaine's body was found on the 13th. Dwyer was arrested on the 17th of October, so just over a month. And I think, and I'd like to talk about this next, I think it was around the 27th of September. There's a great story of how he was identified. Can we just go through that?
Yeah, so like you're working at different things in the incident room, and we were working late into the night, late into the evening, and it was 9 or 10, maybe 11, what's around, and we were just looking at the text messages, and we had looked at them before. There was two messages about flying, or two particular messages about flying, and one said, was up flying at the weekend, skeleton rib cage where the knife went in, wanted a woman next. And that was a reference to the sheep that he had said he had stabbed in the field. So up flying at the weekend. So that was flying. Now, up to then, there was a second message a couple of later, I think it was in early June 2011. Terrible weekend, 15% pay cut, and came fifth in the flying. So we had looked at pilots. We had done quite a bit of work on pilots, looking at individuals but also individuals, bear in mind there was information coming about where the phones were located at the time. So there was information that the phones were generally in use in the Cabinteely area. I think it was using a mast on Rochester Lodge Hotel at night time and in the early morning. And it was using masts in the South City Centre in the daytime. So it was clear to us that we were looking for someone that was living in the South, in Cabinteely and working in town. That was one thing that really, was for me, that's what we're looking for. It has to be somebody. And they're more or less 9 to 5, you could see from the messages, from the location of where the phone were. Now, of course, the phone moved. Of course, the phone moved to other locations, but in general terms, where it was mostly used. Yeah. The 27th, we were looking at flying and the flying messages. And one of the guys who was with me, myself and Jim Mulligan, Detective Garda, who was with me, and Colin Gregan, who's Jim's partner, detective, he's now a detective sergeant in Greystones, he said, where could it be the model airplane flying? He had seen them up at the Sugarloaf Mountain. And he says, well, yeah, we could have a look at it. So he had a look at, got a line on his phone, he had a look at the Model Aeronautical Society of Ireland website. He says, check who came fifth in a flying competition in the 11th of June, the weekend of the 11th of June 2011. Funny enough, listed them out. And who came fifth? Graham Dwyer. Graham Dwyer came fifth in the flying competition. Okay, so that now is a wow moment, right? That's a wow moment, right? So I knew, and we all knew, I knew that there was a diary entry in Elaine O Hara's diary, and it said, Graham's number is 083 1103 474, which was the first master phone. And we said, whoa. So first thing we do is check him on pulse. So we checked him on pulse. So we, Aoife Cronin was with us. Aoife was another great, she was involved with the phone. She did an awful lot of work on the phones, and she was there with us. And then she checked him on, and we could see that he had reported 2 bikes stolen from a company at A&D Veyhart at 23 Lower Bagot Street. So we looked it up. It's an architect company, an architect. There was something in the back of our mind that one of Elaine's friends had said she was in a violent relationship with an architect. She had told her that. And that had come from the initial investigation. When you have the right person, everything falls into place. When you talk about circumstantial evidence is great because the right circumstances, when everything is right, everything will be right. So everything began to fit at that point, And
were there high fives and stuff?
I don't think there were high fives. I think it was, Jesus, we have him, I think it was like, but like yeah, it was great to identify him. Great at that time. And I suppose, so I know Brian Duffy wasn't there at the time. He was the senior investigating officer, so I couldn't get him on the phone. I was going to ring him. I did ring him. I couldn't get him. So I got J.J. Keane he was the detective superintendent. He was with us from MBCI, so I rang him, and he said, "You're right," because Sarah Sked had just on the same time located a car that had travelled to Galway on the 4th of July 2011, a red Audi TT 99G 11850. And I used that in the interview. We only used a lot of things in the.
It's amazing, isn't it? How all these things like tentacles came together, like jigsaw pieces in a jigsaw, all came together. It's fantastic, the detective work they did to solve this case. God, it's just wait till he starts talking about when he went to arrest him. You know, this man is so manipulative and thinks he's so clever. He's another one of them thickos who thinks he's really clever. The way the police brought all this together is pretty impressive, isn't it?
But so all those things came together, and it just like things fitted in. And so when you have a suspect, and all he is a suspect at that point, you have to continue to build your case. So we can't go to him. We can't go to anybody we can't go to the architect's company. We can't go to his family at that point because we want an element of surprise when we're going to, and that's part of the strategy. So I suppose you narrow your focus in. You don't put all your eggs in one basket because he's a suspect. Could it be somebody else? Yeah, it could. Of course it could. So you keep doing your work, keep building. So it was mainly around the phone records, you know, the locations of the phones at the time, and more importantly, the content. So we looked at the content and see how much of it we could fit into the known lifestyle of Graham Dwyer without going to anybody that would know him. So in other words, I did a detailed background on him. You know, found out where he went to school, found out where he went to Bolton Street, what cars he had, all the cars he had at the time. Obviously, you go to revenue and you go to social welfare. I got warrants for his bank accounts. All of that was done, shows the locations, where he'd be at particular times. There's mention of working in Poland and all these type of things. These are mentioned in the text messages. Everything was just fitting in. So then you're deciding, because you have a suspect, I think you move towards, a possible arrest. So you start putting your strategy in place then, and...
So were you looking at him for a couple of weeks before?
He was identified from the 27th of September, definitely as a suspect, and then things sort of fall into place. You don't just say, "Oh, he's a suspect, I'm going straight out to get him." No, you build, and you're waiting usually for records of phones. Usually phones are things that although they were great in this case, they really were, and they helped us out. We had a lot of stuff, but.
When he emerged as a suspect, I remember reading you got a photograph of him online.
Yes.
Was that his LinkedIn photograph? The one he's wearing, staring straight at the camera?
Yeah.
Because I remember getting that picture myself and going, that couldn't be a better mugshot. Yeah.
There was a number of them, and you see, we had a CCTV team as well, and. You see, in the initial investigation, the missing persons investigation, we had taken the hard drives of the CCTV, which proved to be, it was just crucial. It was really fantastic. But you look at the 22nd of August when Elaine went missing, and then you don't really go back much further because it's not part of the missing persons investigation. But then they started to go back. And during this time, the team found a fella going into the apartment on the 15th of August, and they showed us the photograph. I think we have him. Now, it was good. I would say it was good. It wasn't exceptionally clear, but it was good. And I looked at the picture and I says, "You see him all right? You see him? Definitely, And I always talk about this even when I'm teaching in Templemore, you still have to keep an open mind, and you genuinely, that's not just saying it for the sake of saying it. You have to keep an open mind. You have to be open to other things. even when you have all this evidence and it's coming around, it can be very difficult at times. But you have to keep an open mind. What's he going to say? You're getting there, but you're not fully there.
So, and I remember from the trial at least one man giving evidence, but Elaine said in the text that she had 3 or 4 regulars. Dwyer was obviously one. The others were all, you call it tracked down, eliminated, tied.
Yeah,
So they were all tracked.
They were all tracked down. I think.
So she had other people that she'd contacted on that website. Oh, poor Elaine. You've just like, she was taking so many chances. I mean, you can't victim blame. It's not her fault. She should be able to live her life as she chooses to live it. But, Graham, he was just so horrible, the things he was saying in those texts. Why did she let him say those things? She thinks she fell in love with him. She thinks she was in love with him. And, of course, we don't know what the other texts are. I'm sure he manipulated her. He probably said nice things to her as well. Maybe he held out a promise to her of getting her pregnant or whatever and giving her a child. That's what she wanted. Who knows? So she had other masters as well, but they eliminated all them from their inquiries. But, just a warning to everybody. When someone says they want to stab you, they're to be avoided. Aren't they? Bless
There was 7 or 8. I can't remember exactly, but it was 7 or 8. I think maybe not regulars, but had anybody that was in contact with her on the phone, any phone number that she had on her phone, I think we tracked them all down. And to be fair to the individuals, to be fair to them, they all cooperated. They all cooperated. And it's not a nice thing maybe to have to say that you're involved in, but they did.
Let's talk about the arrest. I'm interested in the process. You didn't just say, right, we're knocking on Dwyer's door. Who gave you permission for the arrest? Is there a chain?
Well, there's not really. To arrest somebody, I have to make up my mind. And it has to be in my mind that I believe that there's sufficient evidence to arrest them. And I certainly did. And it's funny, nobody can direct you to arrest somebody.
Oh.
No, can't tell you. You have to be, you individually, you have to have the suspicion. So I had certainly had the suspicion because I had the grounds. But obviously, it goes through the chain. I mean, there's other things that's going to be done on the day, So we sent people to Cork to his family. Obviously, we are going to get a warrant to search his house at the time of the arrest or after, which became really significant, of course. We're going to search the office. So we've got to get warrants. All these things, they take time. You have to, all these documents have to be typed up. You have to go to the court. You have to get your warrant, swear your information. You have to get your teams in place. So you'd have to have a sergeant maybe in 6. Okay, it's not any of these places. You're not going to get great resistance. It's not as if you're going into, a major criminal's house. But so you might have a team that would just carry out the search. We also had teams that were going to Donegal to interview his former partner. But all these things were being done on the day. So it's not just I can rock up on my own and, dear, come on, and we'll come down and we'll have a chat. Like, there's major plans going into it and strategies. But then, just building up to that day, I suppose my focus, and I tried to have as much focus as you get, although you get dragged into other things, on the interviews. So we had a level 4 interview advisor who happened to be Geraldine Noon, who was the lady who actually designed the GSIM. So she initially was the one who, brought it into being in the Guards, and there was a big process in that. But so she was the level 4, and she's a forensic psychologist. And she would have told us that Dwyer was an absolute narcissist. And, from reading the messages and that, he would respond to, building up his ego. And that, this is how we would deal with it. So we had developed plans. I suppose the 17th we arrested him. So we're probably starting to plan the interviews at least a week in advance, and the strategy of how we're going to. So how are we going to connect him? So bear in mind, the Garda Síochána interview model is about gathering the information. So I'm going to gather information. And what's important to us, you have to think about what's important. If we can connect him as the person sending those text messages, all that, the 2,000 odd text messages between himself and Elaine, from the initial master phone to Elaine's iPhone, and from the 2 phones that were found in the reservoir. If we can connect him to them, then I had no doubt that that person that was sending the messages was the individual who had killed Elaine O'Hara, who had murdered Elaine O'Hara, who had planned. So we had 3 separate plans, actually. We had a plan for a no comment interview, and what a strategy around how we would get engagement with him. We had a plan for him talking, but not talking about Elaine O'Hara. And that was mostly the plan that was used. And then we had a plan for if he did talk about Elaine O'Hara. So it was 3 separate plans. But you can only plan for the first interview and maybe have an outline of a plan for the second, third, and fourth, because you don't know what you're going to get.
So it has to be really dynamic, is it?
Yeah, it has to be flexible, very, 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 very much so. You have a set of objectives that you need to achieve. So I would have an overall plan that this is what we're going to do, but I have a set of mind maps, and I do draw it out in mind maps, and so I want to talk to you about. So
I want to ask first of all about the arrest.
Yep.
Did he know he was ghost when you knocked on the door?
No, Graham Dwyer always thought he was going to get away with this. Graham Dwyer, he never thought he was ghost. He even during his detention, I would have come down to you lads. I'll come down anytime. Sure, let me go, and I'll come back down tomorrow if you want. He never ever thought he was ghost, because he never thought that we had enough evidence to even charge him. So when I knocked on the door at, I think it was 7:06 on the 17th of October, 2 of us were at the front door, only 2. And that's part of the strategy. We didn't want to upset him, didn't want to upset his wife, we didn't want to have any real...
You know, it's funny when you hear them talking about, like, the arrest is, when it comes to the day that they arrest, not only him, anyone, any twonk that they've hit, they've got to be very careful with it, haven't they? You know, the arrest is a very crucial part, or will be, when it comes to the conviction. Because if it's done wrong, or if it, you know, the person panics, well, you'll see what he says, what happens here, where he went, you know, thought for a minute that he'd done a runner, you know, just, you know, everything about it is on a knife edge, isn't it? You've got to get it right. And he's saying here, like, he only took 2 guys with him because he didn't want, you know, him to open the door and then be scared, because it was like, you know, 10 policemen there, didn't want to be battering down the door or whatever. But then you don't know, sometimes that is the way to go, you know, because it depends on the person. I think with Graham Dwyer, what they knew about him, that although he was a dangerous man because of what he did to Elaine, probably in real life he wasn't dangerous at all. He wasn't likely to do anything to them. He wasn't likely to have a gun. He might have a knife, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like if you're arresting a gangland boss, or, you know, someone who's been accused of, you know, those kind of things, that are more aggressive people. Really, Graham Dwyer is such, in his real life, is such an insignificant person, you know, completely insignificant. But then, you know what, he could have turned and he could have ended up doing something to one of the policemen or to himself. So yeah, it's a real touch and go situation, isn't it, the arrest?
Difficult, just take him out with no fuss, no big flashing lights, no nothing, as little fuss as possible. So I knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, and took about, you know, people are waking up. Although we expected that he would be awake, we expected that he'd be getting ready to go to work. He comes down the stairs in his pajama bottoms and, you know, top on, and he comes to the door, and I showed my ID at the door, and he comes towards the door, and then he goes back up the stairs, and I said, "Oh shit," because we had the warrant and we could have gone in. You know, I said, "What's happening here?" But he only went off to get the keys to open the door. But these things happen, Ian. These things happen.
But did he show, when he saw your badge, did he show any facial
Well, he turned away,
changes?
so I don't know.
Like, I don't know, somebody comes to you,
I'd say he did, but I don't know. He turned away because I can tell you what he said when I told him I was arrested. So this is all part of the plan, and the strategy is that if we can arrest him in a certain location and take him out, let people, as quietly as possible. So when I told him initially, I'm arresting you for the murder of Elaine O Hara, he said, I don't know anything about that. So, my first thing, then I caution him, and then I say, look, do you want to go up and get dressed? So,
Do you know what? That just must have been a fantastic moment. And Graham Dwyer's got away with it, for a year. He must have thought he'd got away with it forever. It's like, there you go, karma, just biting him on the backside.
You do the human thing because you deal with everybody as a human, as an individual. You allow them, doesn't matter who they are, you allow them to do the natural things that they want to do in the morning. Go brush your teeth, get dressed, have a shave if you need to. I'm going to have to deal with you, so I'm building rapport with you from the start. But also, the first time I meet you, and that was the first time I ever met Graham Dwyer, I have to create a reasonably good impression with him. People will decide on, whether they think you're a reasonable person in the first 15 to 20 seconds.
Were you nervous?
Of course. And every time I go into an interview room for a murder, I'm always nervous. And if I'm not, there's something wrong.
But knocking on the door, was it butterflies? Was it that sort of thing?
Yeah. But I've done it so many times before, and this is a big one. There's no doubt about it. How many times do you do it? You go regularly. You come in the mornings, you get your warrant, you go out, you go to some location, you're going out to arrest people. That's what you do. It's a normal run of the mill thing, but this was an absolute big one, 100%. And yes, it was, yeah. But I knew from the whole background, I knew I wouldn't get any resistance from him. But when he went back up the stairs, I thought, oh shit, what's going to happen? I really. That was the moment I thought he was going to bolt out the back or do something, But no, he came back down with the keys.
Are you prepared for that eventuality, that possibility?
Well, there were fellas out the back.
Yeah.
There were fellas out the back. But I had to argue with my supervisors about not, going up low key, really low key.
If you look at, I don't know if you've seen Adolescence, that Netflix show, do you see the arrest scene there, the first scene?
Yeah.
There's the English version of the ASU storming in with heckler and cockches and everything. That was overkill. So yours was the exact opposite.
Well, I teach this and when I talk about this, and I talk even in gangland crime. Do we need to go with blue lights and sirens and all of that? You don't. If there's a danger, if there's a firearm involved or a knife involved or someone's likely, yes, we do. Mm-hmm. It's safety first, and 100% safety first. But I always say to people, think about it, you're going to have to talk to these people for 24 hours. You're going to, look, I could tell you a story about another one that we did. And,
we'll be here all day, but we'd be happy to talk to you.
No, but look, you've got to treat people with dignity and respect. It doesn't matter who they are. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter who they are. And the number one criteria when you're going out to do the search is preserve the evidence, yes, but the safety of the Garda members and the safety of the individuals who are behind that door. You've got to think about that.
What was he like in the car? Because you said to him, listen, this is the most serious charge you can face. You need a good solicitor. You need a solicitor. What was his...
You got to think of the family as well, of course. His wife will have been there and his children. And that'd be horrible, wouldn't it? See your daddy being arrested, taken away by the police. That would be horrible.
You were in the car when you were bringing him down.
So, he's very, very, very friendly. But my thing is I'm there to protect the evidence that's going to come. And I have to be fair to him, so I want to get him the solicitor. Now, I knew that Graham Dwyer wasn't the type of individual who'd been in and out of the criminal courts. He'd never been in a criminal court. And I suspected that he probably wouldn't know a criminal solicitor. And he wouldn't know the ins and outs of interviewing or all that type of stuff. This is part of the background. So as part of the treatment of persons in custody regulations, we are obliged to inform them of their right to consult a solicitor. But I wanted to do that very, very early. I wanted to tell him his rights immediately. Get the solicitor. This is your entitlement. You're entitled to say no comment. You're entitled to see a solicitor and get good advice. I don't know any solicitor. He said, well, look, I said, the member in charge can advise you. He knows good solicitors. He said he can't afford a solicitor. He's having problems. Okay, no problem. There is no problem. There's really good solicitors on the legal aid panel. Absolutely. And they're as good as anybody. And I was reassuring him. So I reassure him that, look, I tell him that this is what's going to happen. There's a likelihood that you're going to be detained under Section 4 of the Criminal Justice Act. There's a likelihood that you'll be detained down there, and we're going to have to chat to you. So people like to know what's going to happen. People like to plan in their own minds. People don't like to be brought into a station and not knowing what's going to happen. So I tell him, let him know. I'm building rapport with him. I'm allowing him to see a roadmap of the day, even though he thinks this is not going to be over, and they're going to let me out. 100%. He did not believe. First of all, he'd be arrested. He most certainly didn't. He didn't think he'd be kept all day. He kept saying, I'll come back to you, lads. I'll come down anytime. I'll talk to you. Sure, I know you. There's no problem.
So he was brazen.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Oh, he absolutely thought, and he absolutely thought we were stupid. He absolutely did not think that what we were doing was, all part of the plan. And it's not a plan to trick anybody. It's not that. It's about giving them their rights, allowing them to have their rights, but to seek the truth from them.
Let's talk about the interview. You raised a very interesting point. He thought he was smarter than you, and it was Jim Mulligan. He thought you were two guards. He's the architect. I'll have these guys from a dinner.
Without a doubt, you could see that during the interview. So the plan is to connect them to the text messages, as I said earlier. So obviously there are formalities at the start of any interview. So you have to, you put in your tapes, or your discs, and you record. You press the record button. But then as soon as that happens, you must caution them again, and you must tell them about the recording and what can happen to the recordings. There's 3 discs. You can have access to one of them, your solicitor. The DPP or the guards can have access to one sealed in your presence. All these things are formulatic things that are read out normally at the start of every interview. But I try and use them as a bit of an explain. And I even try and use the caution as a bit of an look, do you understand that? Do you know what that means? So tell me what that means. Look, it means you don't have to say anything. So you're being straight up with them. You're not trying to be behind a door or anything like that. Explain. It shows your bona fides in the interview, that you genuinely believe it. So the first question is, look, you're arrested for the murder of Elaine O Hara. Do you want to tell me about that? So I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything about Elaine O Hara at this point. So that's the fork in the road. I know where I'm going. So do I push? Do I push one way or do I push another way? So for me, my plan was, well, tell me what you want. So we start talking about what was in the media. So that's important. That's important. It becomes important later on, because is all the information that he has that he's going to tell you, is it coming from the media or is it coming from him? So I go into detail about that. Okay, what was in it? And he's very cagey at the start, and then you start. Then you're in. He's talking. So he's talking to me. He's talking to me. He's in trouble.
I'm sitting here when you're talking, laughing to myself, because it's a bit of hubris about him, and he does not realise what's coming down the road. He is Ban Jackson.
Yeah.
So he didn't say, "Give me a solicitor." I'm not saying nothing. He immediately started yapping.
But when I say to you, he didn't say, give me a solicitor. He had spoken to a solicitor. Yeah. He had I think, a half an hour or 40 minutes with the solicitor before he come into the interview, and he had a consultation at the end or before every interview. Right. So it's not as if he had long consultations. And I'm sure that his solicitor was really very, very top class solicitor. He's now actually a judge.
He is.
Yeah, Mr. Dunphy. And look, he's very good. Mm-hmm. He, I've no doubt, advised him to say nothing. I know afterwards he did, but Dwyer was that type of fella that if you fed into his ego, he would talk to you. So then we start talking about his life, and we talk about, where he works, the fact that he's an architect. All these things are tiny little things that are important. We talk about, his family life. We talk about the flying competitions, and the one that I particularly like, all the flying competitions. So each time it's part of the plan. We're putting him in a location where the phone is. We're connecting him to the contents that are on the text messages. So one in particular was there was a text message in 2011. It says, going to get a new bike, got to get fit for the murder. And this is, so 3 or 4 days later, he said, cycled into work 10 minutes faster. So I want to talk to him about that. But I don't want to say to him, did you ever cycle into work? Mm-hmm. So we talk around, so we're talking about his work, and he's telling me that he's an architect. Wow, you're great. He does 3D, and well, how do you do that? And he's talking about all this. And then we talk about, how do you get in? I drive. Oh, do you sit in traffic? All the time, you sit in that traffic. Yeah, he says, well, I tried the Lewis, he says, but it's a bit slow. And then I said, did you ever do anything else? Yeah, I cycled in 10 minutes faster. Just 10 minutes faster. Yeah. Cycled in 10 minutes faster. So I'm like, oh, lovely. And so then we talk about his cars and the type of cars he had, and how he had to get the cars fixed at certain times. All these things are, every text message that there's anything personal that could possibly connect Graham Dwyer. Polish architect. He had mixers with the Polish architects. As an architect, he had the Polish ambassador's house. There's a message about that. There's messages about his family. There's lots and lots and lots of different things about where he was working in Carlow, in Donegal, in Galway, where the actual phone locations bring us. We had sat down with Sarah Sked in the 2 days before, and she had given us documents that we could actually read from.
Sarah Sked was the civilian analyst.
Yes, yeah.
It's really interesting. I was looking at her CV during the trial. She has 3 degrees: criminology, 1 in law, and 1 in English and maths.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
A fantastic individual.
Brain must be that size.
She's just unbelievable and so unassuming. Like we sat down and we'd throw things. But how do I do this? And how do I, just because in the interview room, phones. They kill an interview. They really, phone traffic and data kills an interview. But if you could put some life to it, what's the actual, here's the content and here's where you were, when you're explaining masts, and I know of it, I can do it, but it's boring. So you have to put context on it. And she did that, she gave us charts that we could use to read it ourselves and then to show him. So, that's for the later on interviews. But in the first interview, I suppose, there was so much in it that he didn't realise he was giving. He really didn't. And in later interviews, when we were reading out the contents of the text message to him, he said, now I see why you asked me all those questions.
So that's dope.
Yeah, it was a light bulb moment for him. He realised that was a problem for him. He would talk about anything. He would talk about anything except Elaine O Hara in the first interview. And I was impressing on him. Look, talk to your solicitor. Because I knew in my own mind that he probably would have to say he was in a relationship with her at some stage because there was so much evidence, and he did.
And so when it strikes me that every question you ask is carefully engineered, so you're shooting the breeze, but it's all planned. Every question is planned.
Well, I wouldn't say I have a list of questions, but I know the topic that I'm going to go. So I have it in my head, and I mightn't say exactly but yes is the real answer. But I come around it in a way, it has to be conversational. Mm-hmm. It's not formulaic. It has to be a conversation.
So I had 40 questions. I think I've asked one. So I know what you're saying. That that's a route map, as I called it. But
yeah,
there's a dynamic. But just talk me through when he is ticking off every question you have. Right? Are you sitting thinking to yourself, "We'll have the bollocks every question"?
Yeah, I suppose I'm more thinking about have I done this? Where have I go next? Like in the interview room, you're not thinking about, you're not thinking of the satisfaction. You're thinking of where next. That's where your brain is racing. And how am I going to bring him around to this way? Like I really want to talk about Elaine O Hara, but I want to get the other stuff done first. And so your brain is going, where do I get the cars now? To get the Polish, let me see now, that Polish done. I want to get to this. How do I get to that? So it's about. Yes, that's good, and I've done that part. But you're not clapping yourself on the back for that. Look, afterwards, it was a good interview. There's no doubt about it. It was a good interview. There's things in it that I made a pain. You could say things, stupid things, that you don't mean to say, and that's why you can make mistakes.
And when you do make a mistake, this is asking for friends. When you do make a mistake in an interview, do you just okay, I fucked up there, I move on?
No, I'd usually say, sorry, if I think of it at the time, I say, look, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. We'll move on. Like something came up about the solicitor. I was trying to impress on him about, this is one thing I'll tell you. I was trying to impress on him about talk to your solicitor, tell him the story. Because if you told him the story, he'd tell us. So that was a big thing in my mind. But then he started to say, no, my solicitor told me. And he was starting to say, oh, Jesus Christ, no, please don't tell me what your solicitor told me. So no, stop. I shouldn't have said that to you.
Because that's privilege.
Privilege.
Okay.
Privilege. So you're thinking of the legal aspects of everything. Yeah. So please don't tell me what your solicitor told me. I'm only telling you, so maybe I shouldn't have gone there. There's certain things that you would do differently. A lot of things that you would do differently.
On the basis of that first interview, did you think this guy's going to crack? He is going to confess?
Well, I knew we were going to get something more out of him, I suppose. I knew he was coming, but you see, okay, you're not going to like this one. At the start of the second interview, the media had made a mess of us. The media.
It's your fault,
the media.
Was far too young. It was definitely.
So first interview was over. It took 4 hours. 4 hours. So you read it over to him and all of that. Not everything that I say is written down because Jim Mulligan couldn't keep up with it, but he gets quite a lot of it. He's writing. He's doing the writing. So it's read over to him anyway. So at the end of the interview, he has a consultation with the solicitor. Solicitor tells him, it's all over the media, your family know you're arrested. I said, oh, Jesus Christ. Here we trying to keep our powder dry. We have a plan. And here it is. Like, I got accused in the trial of leaking it to the media. But that was like I couldn't have been further from it because I think I was accepted as well. That we had a plan that we wanted to go a certain way, and we wanted to keep him reasonably isolated from everybody and just to engage with us. And here he was. So at the start of the second interview, his anger was palpable. His anger that he was arrested and that he was connected with this case, and how was he going to look now? His.
Can you imagine once he realised, that what was happening? He would get angry. Then that's what he'd do. That's what these people do, isn't it? So they start off all, because they think they're the clever ones, and there's no evidence. And then as time goes on, and they realise, they get angry, don't they? I mean, Russell Williams actually didn't get angry, did he? He sort of just capitulated in the end and realised that the game was up, and he just cooperated because he was trying to protect his wife. But, a lot of these twonks, that's what they do. So now he's realised he's not as clever as he thinks he is. And he's starting to get angry now, because it'll be everybody else's fault except his. It'd be Elaine's fault, or it'll be the policeman's fault, or it's everybody's fault. It's not his. He will never take responsibility for his own actions, will he? That's the sort of person Graham Dwyer is. And that's exactly what happened. So he spent 10 years since he was convicted appealing against all this. And he's had his appeals all rejected, and he's got no more appeals left. Wonder what he's doing now. Who's blaming now?
Professional life was ruined by us, and it was out in the media. And of course, so we had to deal with that. And, you have to deal with that. And obviously, you're not planning for that initially, but so you deal with it. And it took us about at the start of the second interview, it took about maybe 20 minutes to bring him around again.
Could you turn it to your advantage? Was it?
Well, what I say to him is, look, Graham, I'm in here with you. I'm dealing with you. I don't know it. I didn't know. And I genuinely didn't know. Like, I didn't know, but his solicitor knew. I said, I don't know what's going on out there. We'll deal with that afterwards. The aspects that we have to deal with serious cases. So you don't hide behind it and say, oh, no, it's a be all grand. You can't say that either. What you do say is that, look, we're here to talk about more important things. I can't control what happens in the media. I can't control. I really don't know what's going on out there. And I'm sorry if your family are hurt. But, so it did mess up our interview plans. He was so annoyed with it. But then you just move on, and he does come back. The engagement started because, like, he is an individual who would always sort of talk to you. There's some individuals who are just talkers, but there was also quite good rapport with him. He I suppose he had a trust in us in some way.
So that's a rapport phase, right? But you have to go to the challenge phase.
Yeah, but it's rapport with a purpose. Right. So there's a purpose to that rapport. So it's also an account phase. So an account phase is about an account in relation to, what you want to talk about. So we were getting an account from him, but we did ask him about being up in Stepaside. Had he ever done any jobs up there? Was he ever around there? And he said that he had been up there at the shop. Now, if you know Bellarmine, what would you be doing up there at the shop in Bellarmine? Unless you lived because it's down right in the apartments. So that was grand. I knew, I'll go back to that. I'll be there. Yeah. So we did go back to that at the start of it, and we started to talk about how did you know it was there, and how did you know? It gets more difficult for him. Then we move into the challenge phase, and so I think that our plan was, we were going to show the CCTV. So because we wanted to do it in chunks, we wanted to do the CCTV, then the call data, so the locations of the phones, and interact them together, if you know what I mean, because there was an interaction. He used the calling card when he was going to Elaine, assume the position. This was for Elaine to assume the position. And then he would appear at the door. So I think at that time we had him on 5 occasions. There was the 15th, one occasion Elaine wasn't there. We did 15th of August, 13th of August, a couple of times in July and June. But some of the CCTV footage was reasonably good, and some of it wasn't. So, but we got.
Yeah, so he'd been seen, he's denying having a relationship with Elaine, but he was seen on CCTV going into her apartment several times. And so that was crucial as well, that CCTV. So, the thing is, he, as I say, he's not as clever as he thought he was. Didn't he know there was CCTV? This reminds me of Erin Patterson a bit. There she is, this CCTV at the dump where she's dropping off stuff. There's CCTV at the toilet where she went for 9 seconds. All these things. Don't they understand CCTV? They're supposed to be, intelligent people. I wouldn't say I'm that intelligent or criminal minded, but I know that there's CCTV everywhere.
Got the stills. We showed them to him, and he said, look, come on, who's that? So you don't say, that's you, Graham. He says, look, show me. Actually, I think we probably showed the actual CCTV first before we showed the stills, which is a good way of doing. What do you see there? Everybody, when they see themselves on CCTV, even if it's shit, they know it's themselves. They know, it's a psychological thing. Even in the worst bit of CCTV footage, when they have been there, they're thinking, "Oh shit."
What did he say when you said, "Who's that?"
No comment. Right. So he said no comment. Yeah. So but it's okay. That's okay. Right?
Was that his first no comment?
We might have done some to about Elaine earlier on, Yeah. So you just have to get him out of that, So you talk him around. So I'll show you the stills. Stick the stills up on the wall. So he's looking at them. So he's sitting in the chair, and he's looking at them all the time. It's really, really important. that evidence is surrounding him, all the time. So then we move on to the contents of the text messages and we read sort of some of them out. So we have a plan around. They're not necessarily date order, that we jump back and forward a little bit, but because we want to interact with the CCTV first. So we show the phone is using a mast and step aside Garda station. Here's the CCTV. Okay, mast mean nothing to me. He's trying to boot that away, right? So then we move on to the content of the text message. Here's the message saying that you're going to meet Elaine. Assume the position. Here's the person arriving at the door of the apartment block and the phone. So we have the phone location, we have the content, and we have the CCTV. So we're marrying all three of them, we're talking, we're pointing at this. So we put up pictures of the phones then on the other wall. So the 2 phones from the reservoir, the initial master phone, which was only a generic picture, but we knew what type of phone it was. And then his work phone as well, because his work phone was using masts in the same location when the master phone was being used, which was very important. But he didn't, I suppose, he kind of batted that away in some way. In a way, like he kind of, well, that's meaningless to me. This is meaningless to me. How can you say, how big is a mast? How, I had to be, how big an area does a mast cover? Like I was explaining to him, and you have to be fair with people. Like I can't say that because your phone is using a mast in step aside Garda station that you're at number 98 Bellarmine Plaza. I'd say it's within the footprint of the cell. But how big is the footprint of the cell? I said, I can't tell you exactly, but it could cover a large area if you're, but, well, then I could be in anywhere. So he's trying to bat it away. But what I say to him is, over the period of time when the phones are at the location on each occasion and when they move down the country, it shows, that your phone and the master phone are continually in the one location. And so it's about, even though you're not getting engagement, it's going in. And he's kind of saying, then when we start reading out the more, the horrible text messages that you've read over, he was feigning being shocked. He says, oh my God, please stop, please stop. I said, well, look, this is the evidence I have to read over.
You think that was fake?
Oh, without a doubt. At one stage he got very annoyed with me. And I said to him that you have a fetish for stabbing women and bloodletting. He says, he pointed at his penis, says, look, do I have an erection here? Do you think I have an erection? What do you think? Do you think I'm getting some? So he got really pissed off with reading out the content of it. And then...
Oh my God, I bet he's got a butter mushroom. I've just got that feeling. Oh God, what a horrible man.
Then it was then that he realised that all the stuff we talked about in the first interview was connecting him to the actual sending of the text messages.
See, it didn't, in the trial, I remember during the trial, it was, Jesus, stop, I don't want to hear any more of this. But so that came across, and I know we can't give a commentary in the trial, that came across as genuine upset. He was faking this.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. It was, I don't want to hear this. This is, he was definitely registering that, oh, Jesus, they have all these messages and they look so bad for me. That is definitely what was registering with him at the time. And he knew that, I'm sure he didn't remember exactly every text message but it's like yourself, and if you read out a text message and you send something stupid, say, oh, geez, did I actually send that? It's there, But,
wow. I remember during the trial, there was a great quote from yourself. You stupid man, you thought you had done the perfect crime. And by the way, do you remember I saw you in the lift that day? And I said, Peter, thanks for saying you had done the perfect crime, because if you said committed, it wouldn't have fitted in the headline. And you looked at me as if I was a complete dick. And it was, but I was trying to break it. But anyway, how did he react to that? Because that was really dramatic.
That was probably late on, in probably the third interview, because at that point he hadn't admitted to being in a relationship with Elaine O Hara. That's probably one of many things I said to him, it was like what you do is you build up the challenge. So you categorize your evidence from weak to strong, but sometimes I always say this: you don't get too. Sometimes CCTV footage is slightly different because I'm thinking of a teacher now and tell more. CCTV is different. You always show the best piece of CCTV first because you want someone to recognise themselves and say that's me, even though it mightn't be at the crime scene. So, but you go from weakest to strongest and you build up your case. So the strongest piece of evidence that we probably had, and it came later that night, was the DNA evidence. We didn't know we were going to have it, but we knew we had semen on a mattress in Elaine O Hara's. We thought it was likely to be Dwyer's, but could be anybody else. But it came. The forensic scientists worked through the day, and they gave us a notification at I think around 11 o'clock or that night. In the third or well into the third interview, and we said that to him, like, your DNA has been found up in Elaine O Hara's apartment. What do you have to say for that? And I think that's what led up to that question about the stupid. You're really into the challenge phase then, and like a challenge phase is very, very. Some people think that you're just putting the evidence to him. You're accusing him. What I'm trying to do, I'm always trying to get engagement. By me just saying that things to him doesn't mean anything. It'll never be. From me saying that is not evidence. I have to get something back from him. I have to get for the jury to hear it, which is what I want to do. It's got to be a response from him. So what I say. While when I say it doesn't really matter, it does matter in that it's registering with him. It's to elicit a response, but I've got to try and say something in the challenge phase that will. I'm not just putting forward a case because the case will stand and fall on what you have anyway. But the interview room is about getting a response.
How did he react when he said, "We have your DNA"?
He just you could see the wind went out of him at this stage, but. He still didn't. At the end of the third interview, see, all these interviews are about 4 hours long. They're really the concentration levels are really. It's a stressful place to be in, but it's a great place to be in as well. It's a privilege to be in there, but you really are concentrating. It's so tiring. It really is so tiring. You wouldn't believe it, how But the end of the third interview, we had got to the stage where the DNA had been shown and all the things were building up on him, but there was new stuff coming into us as well, in that the lads who had been in Cork and the lads who had been in A&E Vehard, and in particular the lads who had been in Donegal with the partner was coming, hadn't read them yet, that they were coming, but he said to me, "I want to tell you something, but I don't want this air my dirty laundry in public. If I tell you, will my laundry be aired in public?" And that happens in interview rooms quite a bit. You wouldn't believe it, but it does. Or people will ask you, "Well, can you protect my family?" And you say, just as legally, you can't go there. Threats, promises, or inducements. I cannot get involved in threats, promises, and inducements. And not alone do I have to. There's nothing underhand or undertone. I say, "Listen, Graham, I can't make any promises here. I cannot say that. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know what you're going to tell me, but I can't make any promises to you." But I still know he wants to tell me. So I know it's building with him. And the pressure is building with him. And I still had more time. I knew it was boiling with him when he was coming. But it was at the end of the interview. And it always happens at the end of an interview. It always happens around midnight. That's what happens. I've seen it time and time again. I've seen it with other cases, that it'll happen when nobody else is around at midnight. I want to tell you something. And they look for protection. You have to deal with that in a certain way. But in this case, I batted it away in a certain degree. Says, "I can't promise you anything." But I also knew he's going to have to talk to a solicitor. And this is going to be a problem, because the solicitor will tell him, "Jesus, don't talk to them. Shut up. Say nothing. This is going to get you in trouble." I know that.
What did he say when he said, after you said?
"Well, then I can't tell you." He said, that's what he said. "Well, then I can't tell you."
Wow.
What are your thoughts as to what he was going to say?
He was going to tell me he was in a relationship with Elaine, and he did tell me. I know it was building with him at that point. Like, but I said, look, it's got to be. I was confident that he'd come back to it again, you know, and I'm always confident that if you have that rapport with him, that he'll come back, you know, that there'll be a good chance that you'll get him back there. And we did at the start of the next interview. So there's lots of things that are important, but the bag that was recovered in Randall was really significant in the interview. But it was really significant in the trial as well, because I don't know if you remember the picture. Remember the picture of him going out with the bag on his back on the 15th? And then the picture of the bag, the two were put up on the screen together. I mean, that
was powerful.
Oh, very. And we had that in the interview. And we put it up. And we're showing that, like, here, look, we obviously showed him the physical bag first. And but then we put the two up together. He says, oh, look, you know, how can you explain that? Here's the bag going from, you know, it's a distinctive type bag. Okay, there's more than one bag, you know, but it's quite distinctive. And here it is in the reservoir. So we start and we're talking about the bag, and we're talking about the CCTV, and we're talking about his work colleagues who had looked at the CCTV footage and who had said that was Graham Dwyer. So we're reading out their statements, and he said, why would they say it's you, Graham? Why would they say it's you? He says, because that is me. So that was at 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:10, I think we're about, but this was in the fourth interview. And so I'm doing something, so I don't want to be excited about that. You know, I don't want to show that. So I continue with what I'm doing. So I continue reading it. Right, okay. Right, tell me about that. When did you meet her? So the other plan kicks into place then. The plan for yes, he did know. So he went into a big spiel about he met her on Oz.com and he was into bloodletting. And he told a lot about it, you know, about how he met her. But then he gave a lot of detail about, you know, he was talking to her on the phone and they stopped for a while and all this, you know, even corroborated more what was in. He identified the bag then. He identified the knives that he'd handled all them. They were in the apartment. And he talked about the relationship, but he talked about it. He would have talked down about Elaine. You know, he said she wasn't very good looking, and she wasn't, you know, that he clearly used her, but he wouldn't talk about.
What a twonk. What a twonk he is. Oh my God. I hope he's miserable in prison. So anyway, I was just Googling then. Women have been visiting him in prison. These women, what's wrong with them? For fuck's sake.
But his sexual gratifications, but he would talk about what she wanted. Right. That she wanted to be chained. And but it was all to defend himself. You know, it was a version of the truth, but it certainly was that the relationship was in it. And then we were asking him about could he tell us how the relationship finished, which was important because there was no more contact after the 22nd of August. So he kind of shut down. Then after that.
Was there any warmth at all from Dwyer towards Elaine?
No. She was always an object. Not in the interview room anyway. Not that I ever seen. No. He didn't have any. You know, there was no kindness in him towards her at all. Now, look, maybe in the text messages you could read some kindness into some parts of it. In that, you know. He does say thanks for things in certain times, but But I didn't see anything in the interview room. Definitely not.
Jesus. So the decision is made to charge. I know that it was I think it was Sergeant Gordon Wolfe formally charged him. Did you say to him, Graham?
Yeah. So what happens there is we go through the night, and he declined to take his rest period at 12 midnight. So we're going through the night with the interviews. So at 7 o'clock in the morning, I got news that the DPP has decided that all this stuff goes into the DPP. So the DPP is getting the interview notes, and they're getting all the information that's come through. And they decided at 7 o'clock in the morning that there's sufficient evidence to charge him. So I go down to him, And I say, look, Graham, I'm telling you, you're going to be charged with murder, but I'm releasing you now. So I release him from the provision section 4. But I can't. It's actually Sergeant Wolf actually does the releases. So I bring him up to the public. So you're going to be released now from provision section 4. Right. I'm rearresting you now for the murder of Elaine O Hara. So I rearrest him, and then there's a new custody record filled out, and you have to go through the rigmarole of all the treatment of persons custody regulations again. He's put back out with the cell, and then I have to go back up at 7 o'clock in the morning, type up my charge sheet.
So how did he react, and how did you feel at that moment?
He couldn't believe it. You know, his solicitor was there, and he was kind of, I'm not going home. You know, he was that all that. You know, he thought he was going home, and I kept saying to him, no, look, we have to go to court. We'll see that. You know, we'll see that. I didn't tell him that he's going to be in custody for the rest. You know, I didn't know that actually. But for me, I have to do my stuff, my formalities. I have to go back up and type up the charge sheet, and I have to go and print out and all the things the normal things that has to be done. You know, so it's 7 o'clock in the morning. About 10 to 7 or whatever. So we go back up and we get the charge sheet. We have to make sure the charge sheet is right. I think we had to ring the DPP back because we said, where, you know, normally you put a location. Where are we going to put, you know? So within the state or whatever. So we were worried about little things. You're always worried about little things that you put something wrong on the charge sheet that, you know. So
you have those nuts and bolts things to do, but surely a part of you internally was doing cartwheels.
Look. There's no doubt we were happy. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about it. But you know yourself that there's work to be done. This is only the start of it. Like, you know, the work only starts when you have someone charged, like to get the book of evidence ready. Everything has been, of course, there's some level of it. And there's some level of justice for Elaine's family. Like, I wouldn't have been talking to them in those days. There was a family liaison officer with them, Paul Corcoran. Fantastic, you know, he had fantastic rapport with them, and he gets on brilliant with them, you know, and he's a really good guy. And but I wouldn't have been talking with them at the time. We would have spoken to them afterwards, and it's great for them. You know, it is about getting justice for Elaine. You know, it is good. It's good news, but you just move on to, okay, what do I have to do next? Right, the bail application. Oh, that we had to jump through hoops.
But before we get to that, just in the interview process, the whole 24 hours that he was.
Yeah, it's almost. I mean, once you charge them, once he's charged with murder, that's where the real work starts, isn't it? You know, or continues, or gets even harder, because now they've got to bring him to a court, and everything's got to go right. You know, they've got to secure his conviction, because you only get one chance. You know, he'll go to court, charged with murder, and if he doesn't get found guilty, that's it. He's free. It's quite scary, really, isn't it? You can see, you know, it's difficult for the police because they want him to be found guilty, but they've got one chance to find him guilty. And it is, you know, circumstantial evidence, a lot of it, with all murders. Nobody's normally there to actually watch it happen. The person who's been murdered can't speak. So, you know, unless there's conclusive proof, which there sort of isn't in this case, really. There's all that bit like with the Aaron Patterson case. A lot of circumstantial evidence as to why he's guilty, but there's no smoking gun, is there really? You know, in this case. So, you know, it's a lot. It's like, so he's been charged. They've gone through all that to bring him to the point where they've charged him. Now they've got to secure a conviction.
Detained. Do you believe that all the way up until you said you're going to be charged with murder, he thought he was not? He thought he was going to walk out.
100% he thought. Always. He never thought he'd be arrested. When he was arrested, he thought, look, I'll come down and I'll cooperate with you. I'll come back another day and we'll finish up now, and, you know, you can let me out after the first interview. He certainly never thought that he'd be charged. When he was charged, he most definitely believed he'd get bail. When he didn't get bail, he said at the trial that it was only a matter of time that all the forensic evidence cleared him, and that he would get out at the trial. And his confidence didn't even wane when he was convicted. He had the civil case going on in relation to the retention of phone data, and he believed that he would win his appeal. And right up to the Supreme Court, he was confident that he would get out.
The trial itself, were you prepared for the level of publicity around it? I mean, had you ever come across a case of this kind of attention?
No, I don't think any.
Yeah, it's interesting as well that he says his confidence never wavered. He never thought he'd be arrested. He never thought he'd be charged. He never thought he'd get found guilty. And then even when he was found guilty, just that he thought he was going to be cleared by all these appeals that he's made. But hopefully, he must realise now that's not happening. He's gone as far as he can with appeals. He's gone to the Supreme Court. He can't go anywhere else, really. But, you know, I think what he was probably thinking is, because Elaine had been deceased for so long, sadly, before her body was found, they could not establish a cause of death. So that made this a difficult case for the prosecutors, because it's not to say, oh, she was stabbed, because they couldn't tell if she'd been stabbed or not, or she was strangled, or this, that. It was impossible to establish a cause of death. So, you know, that made the case difficult, but it was all the other evidence, wasn't it? You know, that conspired against him, thank God.
But he has, no. I wasn't prepared. But you'll have to consider that the trial, like at the trial, there's so much work for us to do as well. I mean, I'm not saying that in a flippant or any kind of way. Like, my concentration is, right, we have a witness manager who's Dave Lestrange, who's really good. Like, so there's hundreds of witnesses, but every witness gets a witness orders them to come to court, but you can't bring them all on the first day, you know, so you have to keep them in line. So every day we have a meeting with counsel, and we have, we need you to do this. So we get a list of things. You go home after the trial, you could have 20 things to do. You obviously have to arrange to ring your witnesses and have the next set of witnesses ready for the next day. But usually there's other stuff to be done as well. You know, there's tidying up on bits of evidence that needs to be done. All sorts of things. We were getting emails at 11 and 12 o'clock at night from Sean Guerin, and it was just like, so I say that in the context of the media. I wasn't really aware. I was in a little bubble. I knew, obviously, even getting into court was a struggle. You know?
I was going to say, what did you think of the crowds?
Well, it was just ridiculous, to be honest. You know, I mean, people have an interest, of course, you know, but you know, you nearly had to elbow your way in, you know, and for the family and that. Look, I understand why it was such, you know, an interesting case. I understand that, and people are entitled to know justice is served in public. I agree with that, but. I had never seen nothing like it.
From a journalist perspective, not that this is important, but we were chatting about it earlier, it was horrendously stressful. I have to say, you know, that's time when the judge comes in, Mr. Justice Tony Hunt, and there's the lacuna before the jury are brought in. And I can guarantee you, because I've spoken to all the journalists who covered it, every one of us was waiting for Mr. Farrell or Mr. Guerin to stand up and say, Judge, we just want to raise an issue about today's coverage in X. It was terrifying. And only when it said, let's bring the jury in, we had a collective sigh of relief. It was extremely stressful.
There were a lot of issues with people who were posting stuff online, non-professional people, and that went on in the trial. And there were actually professional as well. There was a fine or a donation made to charity by one of the newspapers. In relation to something that was printed. Yeah, there was, yeah.
Jesus, God, you give me, I'm having palpitations.
Yeah, but I mean, look, it was very stressful. And look, I had been over to the States to deal with that lady in the States, Darcy Day, who had, you know, another vulnerable individual. And like, how were we going to get her evidence before the court? You know, all these things are going on in your mind, and you know, you're trying to manage a lot of different things. Look, we had a great team, really.
Now, I was trying to put in the comments, Yvonne asked if they found her whole body, and they didn't. No, they only found 65%. It's very sad. And I was trying to put in the comments that they did not find her skull or her arms. But the YouTube kept rejecting the comment. So yeah, it's very sad. So Yvonne unfortunately was buried. Sorry, not Yvonne. Elaine was buried just 65% of her body, thanks to that twonk. And I just want to show you a picture of Darcy Day. We talked about this in the previous video. So for those who don't know, this girl, Darcy Day, I'm not sure how old she was at the time. She was a girl in America who had suicidal ideation. Graham Dwyer found her online and he was grooming her, asking if he could be the one to kill her. You know, this was his fancy. He would seek out women and girls that wanted to die, and he would offer to take them from this world as if he was doing them a favour. And Darcy was someone, you know, he actually wrote a fantasy blog about her, called Killing Darcy. They found that on his device, you know, on his computer. It's a horrible document, saying, you know, talking about how this is the fantasy. It never happened. He and Darcy never met, but this is what he wanted to happen. She came over from America. He met her at the airport, took her off for something to eat, and they made love, and she cried, and then he murdered her, just like he murdered Elaine, because this was his fantasy. He was like, I think even he was like not only a master, he was like he was playing God. She wanted to die, so he would help her with that and fulfill his own fantasy at the same time, but he was sort of representing it as if he was doing a favour. Anyway, he stayed in contact with Darcy even after he was in prison, even after he was charged. And Darcy actually spoke at the, at the case, at the courtroom, in the courtroom by video link. Now that's who he's talking about when he's talking about Darcy. Darcy had a very lucky escape. Probably other women as well, I would imagine.
We had a great team around us, you know, the incident room team, like they really did fantastic work in putting the file together, getting the trial up and running. You know, Grace O'Boyle was probably in charge of it, Lisa McHugh, Aoife Cronin, Paul Kane, of course, and David Strange then doing the witness management. It was really, really good people. You know, all these things have to be done. You know, there's so much work in getting, you know, the charging of an individual is only really, you haven't half the work done at that stage, you know.
See, whether you like it or not, you became in many ways the focal point of that investigation. First, because you and Jim Mulligan interviewed him, and secondly, you give evidence during the trial, particularly about interviews and that sort of thing. But this was a collective thing. How many guards would have been involved in this?
Well, I suppose at the initial investigations, there were probably 40 or 50 involved, you know, maybe more. You know, when you're collecting CCTV and you're analysing CCTV and you're looking through it, that type that's usually a big massive thing in investigations. And I suppose it was in the early part in this, but we had the CCTV that we had from the hard drives. It actually went back to January, from August to January.
Oh.
So you're talking about looking up all those hours to see somebody. So we had teams watching them. You know, you take a couple of hours, and it's very laborious tasks. You know, when you're, you know, watching CCTV. To watch an hour of CCTV, you might watch it slightly fast forward, but you don't want to miss it. And if you miss something, you know, it's worse than not watching it at all. But all these things happen. So it started off with a major team of Guardian that would whittle down to a core team of maybe, you know, 15 or, you know, 10 or 15, maybe 20. And obviously people come in and out of it, like the guys in the computer crime unit, Reid Wallace, Alan Brown, and the likes of Sarah Sked and all these type of people. But the core team would have been probably 10 or 15. Yeah.
I'm reading the late John O'Driscoll's book. I don't know if you've read it, on duty. Excellent book.
Yeah.
There's one thing that jumped out at me, and I was thinking of it in relation to this interview. He said, a murder investigation can cost between 5 and 8 million euro.
Yeah.
That's fascinating for me. But obviously
that wouldn't come into it for me, but it certainly would for the managers, it would for the superintendents and all, but it wouldn't.
But I think that's an indication of how huge murder investigations are.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think Dwyer was ever close to being acquitted? Were you ever worried he was going to be acquitted?
You always worry. Yeah, you don't know how a jury is going to see the evidence. I mean, I see the evidence in a certain way, but I know myself that I'm looking at it from a Garda point of view, and I know that that's my slant in life. Everybody comes from a different perspective, and I always equate it to. I have 2 kids of my own, but I equate it when the jury is out. It's about waiting for the baby to come. It's just so stressful. You don't know whether you're coming or going. What are they thinking now? What's happening? You really you don't know. You're confident in one way, but then you think, oh, could it go wrong? Could juries see this differently to the way I've seen it? It's about their perspective on the evidence. How do they put weight on particular things? You're always worried. Always.
Did you or your colleagues try to read the jury?
Yeah, of course.
And what were your
look? I was confident, but I was confident more in the evidence. Really, you do look at the jury, and you're when you're in the witness box, you try and portray a professional. Look, we do it professionally as well. But I would say to my lads, look, the jury are out in court. They're watching you. They're watching your every move. Be professional. Look professional. It's very, very important. It's really important how you protect yourself in court, because little things like that make a difference.
So you get the call about the jury coming back.
Yeah.
With a verdict.
Yeah.
I don't mind telling you, my knees went. I was sitting there, and actually, I was tweeting the trial. I had 2 tweets ready. I had a tweet on my phone, and I had a tweet on my iPad. Right, Graham Dwyer acquitted, Graham Dwyer convicted, and the jury said guilty. And right. When you heard the verdict was coming in, talk to me about what you were feeling.
So look, you get the butterflies in your stomach, and we got the team together, and we had a little chat outside. And said, listen, whatever happens here, no reaction. Don't react. This is for the family. So we all came into court, and the foreman passed the note over to the juror, or to the judge, or to the clerk, and he passed it.
God, I can't imagine how it feels waiting for the verdict. Remember when we were waiting for the Erin Patterson verdict? It's nothing to do with us, really, except we've been following the case. We're not family, we're not the police. That, it just must be heart-stopping, waiting for that verdict. Just hoping it will be the right verdict.
Judge, and he read it out, and it was like, it's just, it definitely was breathe a sigh of relief. There's no doubt about it. And I think that was the same for the family. So we let the family go with the witness manager, Paul Corcoran, up to the witness suite, and naturally, there's a bit of hullabaloo around the court and that, and so we talked to Sean Gearan and Anne-Marie Lawler, the 2 barristers, and Sinead McGrath. They're really fantastic people. I couldn't speak highly enough of them. Superb. And they come with us, and we go up to the family room, and we met the family. And look, we had a nice moment. We had hugs, and there was tears, and that, it doesn't. I probably did. It doesn't bring Elaine O Hara back. It never. We knew that, and it's all about Elaine and the family. It wasn't going to bring her back, but it was going to get justice for her and prove that she was, a human being that did nothing wrong. And I think it's very, very important to families. It really is that justice is done for them.
Did you at any stage? Okay, there was plenty going on. Did you stop and take stock yourself and have a private moment to think?
I probably did in the days afterwards, when I was with my family. I probably did. But I still, you still don't realise how big it is at the time, You see the media afterwards. I was asked to go on the Late Late Show and everything, I don't do anything.
Well, why'd you say no?
I don't. Here I am doing media, but I don't get involved with media. I'm retired now, but I just don't, it's not something that I get involved with.
But there was, and I use this word advisedly, there was a frenzy. I was part of it. We were all part of it because I had never. Joe O'Reilly 2007 was humongous. This dwarfed it just by. The case was Kubu. It was unbelievable, and all the things that happened in the trial, and everything. It was just. It was a trial I'll never forget.
Yeah, same as that. Oh, look! I've been involved in a lot of cases, no more than yourself, and I've been in a lot of trials, and some very high profile and some that run of the mill ones, but I've never seen anything like what went on. Look, but it had everything that the humans are interested in. The sexual element in it was certainly interesting for the public, and the fact that it was a murder with all those elements to it, and I suppose his standing in the community, the fact that he was an architect, how could he have done such a thing, having never come to light before. So
Geraldine Noon said he was a narcissist. Okay, I have my own views on him. I think everybody who has been involved in this horrible murder has views on him. What are your views on Dwyer? How would you describe him, or how do you describe him?
Look, he absolutely is a narcissist, and I think he would compartmentalize certain things in his life, the aspect of BDSM aspects. He would see himself as, a pillar of society, that, this was only a thing that went on at the side. Look, he's a murderer. He's a man that committed murder. He's, he took advantage of Elaine and took advantage of others that I am well aware of, for his own gratification. And for that part, I wouldn't have much time for him.
Do you believe in good and evil?
Oh, yeah, I do, of course.
So
look, there's good people.
Context.
But look, there's good people who get involved in bad things. There's people who are convicted of murder, where a short incident has happened and there's a row, and they're serving life in prison for it. In Dwyer's case, this was planned for a long time. He got his own sexual gratification from doing what he did to Elaine and others, and he certainly planned to kill Elaine, and the jury found that. So, over a long period of time, it's not just that it was a once-off thing. So, evil, do I think he's evil? I think you could describe him as that, yes.
No. What do you describe him as?
Yeah, I would describe him as evil, yeah. I think so, yeah.
I'm quite surprised by that, because I thought you'd be, speaking to a lot of guards and they don't really go down that road. But is Dwyer unique in this sense?
Well, he's unique in that you can see the plan in the text messages, taking advantage of Elaine for the whole period from the first messages that are available to us in March 2011, up to the time of her disappearance. He preyed on her vulnerabilities. He preyed on her suicidal thoughts, and he preyed on her for his own gain.
In the media, refer to him as a psychopath. Do you think he fits that criteria?
Well, look, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but there's the attributes appear to be there. But I couldn't say that, as a professional or anything like that, But
can we ask a couple of questions just about the aftermath? Do you think Dwyer killed anybody else?
Look, if you look at the text messages, and I have done inside out and upside down, it appears that he was building up to this, and it does genuinely appear that. But it's also very, very hard to believe that someone would go from 0 to 100. So I don't know if he was involved in other things, but I don't actually believe that he's killed before. I don't believe that, but that's a personal opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think maybe he hasn't killed before, but I expect there's been sex workers maybe that have been on the wrong end of Graham Dwyer. As he says, maybe he hasn't killed before, apart from that sheep, poor bloody sheep. Yeah, maybe not actually, because he kept saying, I want to kill a woman. He was saying that to Elaine, but would he have told Elaine he'd actually killed anyone before? You know, I'm still not convinced he hasn't killed anybody before, honestly. And what he did with hiding everything makes you wonder if one of these women that are missing in those mountains may have been a victim of Graham Dwyer. It's a possibility, isn't it? Because he went to great, you know, it's only really by good luck, you know, that he was caught, that Elaine was found, that the items were found in the reservoir, that everything happened all at once, didn't it? You know, he'd got away with it for a year, and he could have got away with it for so much longer. Had it, you know, it just makes you wonder. And even if he hadn't done anything before he killed Elaine, don't forget, there was a year before he was arrested. So he could have killed somebody else in that year. But anyway, you know, the policeman doesn't think so. I'll go with that's his hunch. You know, he's an intelligent detective. He'll have his detective's intuition. So he's probably right.
And I'm coming, I suppose what informs me is the text messages. I want to do a woman next, and it built up from there. But who can help?
Was he looked at for other murders?
I think he was tentatively looked at. I don't think he was ever a serious suspect in anyone. But to answer your question, wouldn't it be wrong of us not to? You know,
Because he did mention Leonard Marie.
He did.
In the text, and that was mentioned in the trial. And if you look, I have it. If you look at the mugshot of the suspect, if you look at the mugshot of the suspect, there is a bit of a correlation, shall we say?
You could say it's not unlike him, yeah. But he also mentioned the lady in the Phoenix Park,
yes.
The homeless lady that was stabbed. He mentioned the lady out in Raheny, I think, the solicitor lady who was stabbed, and another one down in Limerick. So these type of stabbings turned him on, and he talked about them. Well, look, while you could never rule him out, I could never rule him out of any of them. My opinion is, from reading the text messages, it was a build-up in him to satisfy a sexual fantasy, and that's what he did with Elaine.
When you caught him, by catching him, do you believe you prevented other murders, that he would have, once you do your first murder, would he have gone on?
Well, I'll put it to you like this. I as part of my training as a level 3, I know a bit about sexual offenders and what happens. And sexual offenders tend to build up to an offence, then they commit the offence, and then they stop for a while. And when they stop for a while, the urges build up on them again, and they get the urge, and it becomes overwhelming, and they commit further offences, sexual offences. So this is definitely in the category of a sexual offence. I have no doubt that if he wasn't caught, he would have built up to murder someone again. I have no doubt about that.
So you guys saved another life, at least another life.
Well, look. You can never say that, but I'm sure that if he got away with this, and however length of time it took, but the sexual fantasy that was in his mind would have built up again. And bear in mind that on the morning he was arrested, he'd been looking at some serious stuff on his phone the night before. You know, some stabbing of women in Brazil. You know, really gruesome stuff. You know. So I do believe he would have built up to get somebody else that he could have done that with.
How did he become that person? I'm not going to talk about his family, but he came from a very respectable place, we'll put it that way, right? How did he end up being what I would call a monster?
It's very difficult to say. I mean, he certainly, I presume he had an interest in what he says was horror and horror movies. And that's how he described what he was looking at. But it was a lot more than horror to me, in that it wasn't something like someone jumping out of a bush and scaring you. It was about, like, stabbing and slashing women. And he certainly was at the extreme end of horror, if you could put it mildly. So how did he get to that? I assume, like any person, maybe he started by watching movies, and progressed to watching pornographic material online, and then he began to actually meeting people on alt.com, and he did meet several people, consensual or non-consensual, whatever you may say, but that's how he builds up to it.
We know that since he's gone to prison, he claims to people, and I know that he has given out about media coverage about him and said that he claims that no one killed Elaine O Hara. We know that he's used those words, I didn't kill Elaine O Hara, no one did. What would you say to those claims by him?
Well, the jury found that he did, and that's the truth. I mean, if you look at the totality of the evidence and how he approached it, even, from the time of his arrest right to the time of the trial, he was denied, and he continues to do so. But the text messages show the plan. The text messages show that he wanted to kill a woman, he wanted to stab, rape, and kill, that he had this fetish. And the text messages show that he was planned to bring Elaine O Hara to Shangana. And the text messages show that he definitively met Elaine O Hara and brought her up the Dublin Mountains. Now, what happened up there, nobody knows.
Actually, do you think he filmed it?
100%. Yeah, I absolutely do. Because every time, if you look at the messages, he talks about send me pictures of the stab wounds. So she had to send pictures of the stabs that he had inflicted on her the night before. And that's several times in the text messages. He talks about looking at videos and watching in any of his writings. That's what he talks about. Even the Killing Darcy document or the Jenny's first rape document he talks about. So I have no doubt that he did film it. Believe you me, we looked, we searched. But you know what a micro SD card can hold nowadays, even back then.
It's out there somewhere, you think?
I think so.
He's hidden it.
Yeah, it's not something that you would, like, you could hide something in the back of a curtain, you could, but we the house was searched upside down, and his airplanes, and you have to look at the psychology of that too. You're going to want to hide that somewhere where nobody finds it, but you're also going to want to have it to hand. It's something that he would want to have close to. So we didn't find it.
Can I ask one last question? And Peter, this has been a fascinating interview. Right. Can I ask one last question? Should he be released?
Well, look, everybody in Ireland that is convicted of murder, including the likes of Sean Evans and that, they're entitled to be released on licence. A life sentence normally is around 21, 22 years, I think, nowadays. Should he be released? Maybe if he showed some remorse or had some, shown that he was going to integrate back into society, maybe on a very, maybe day releases here and there, but not for a long time. Not for a long time. I think people have to. It's not about forgiveness or anything like that, but people have to see that when you serve your sentence, you serve your sentence. It's very hard. It's very hard to say that. But that's, my opinion of it. He's a man that should serve a long sentence.
Is he still a danger to women?
Yeah.
Well, unless he's changed, he is. Unless he's changed.
Well, he's never going to change, is he? Oh, sorry, he's the sort of person, he's never should be released. He'll always be a danger to women. He's not only a danger to women, he may even have been a danger to men as well. These people, it's not about it's not about sex, it's about power. Say he's a sex sadist. He's not BDSM. He gives BDSM a bad name, if you like, because it's not a bad thing in itself. It's just like anything else, like any other sort of sex kink, if you like. I don't know. Everybody's got their thing, haven't they? Some people, now, without going into sort of detail about what people like, but everyone's got their things that they like as far as sex is concerned. Some people are vanilla, aren't they? And don't have any sort of fantasies or whatever other people do. And BDSM is just that, really, in its form. He's more than that. He's not BDSM. He's an sex sadist. That's completely different. You know, I think in that sort of community, if you like, the BDSM community, they'd be outraged with someone like Graham Dwyer. It's not about killing people. It's not about even really hurting people, not without their permission. It's all about permission. So it's hard to explain. If you watch 50 Shades of Grey, it gives an insight into it. The first book is good, I think. Then it just gets stupid after that. And the film was absolute rubbish, I thought, because the casting was terrible. Just didn't, it just wasn't. Film was rubbish, to be honest. But yeah, I did watch it with that posh cinema in Glasgow. Can't remember what it's called now, but it's like you've got like the double seats and you can have a drink, and it was a fabulous cinema. With my partner at the time, we went and watched it, but it was boring, to be honest. I wouldn't say it sort of settles a light. Do you know what I mean? It was supposed to, but it didn't. It just wasn't a good film at all. It's a shame, really. But yeah, that's completely different from what Graham Dwyer is and what he did. Now, be interested in a minute. This is where he says that he thinks, and I agree with him, 100% that foul man videotaped murdering Elaine. 100%. Now, where that is, that video, where he's hidden it, maybe he got rid of it when her body was found and he realised, I don't know. Or maybe it's still somewhere and he can still look at it if he ever gets out of prison. He can go and find it wherever he's hidden it. But 100% he made a video of it. And Peter here, he says the same thing.
Wow.
I imagine this. I
No,
I don't want to keep the interview going too long, but I just want to ask you. Like, I'm sure this is a case that it's going to stay with you. It has stuck with you. I mean, you've covered many case, but is this the one that you can't get out of your head?
Definitely. I mean, I suppose this defines my work, because it probably gave me legitimacy in the training in Templemore. There's no doubt about it. It's the biggest case that I was involved in. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Listen, it's been fascinating. Thank you for speaking
Peter.
to us.
Wow,
Thanks,
that was brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
I must have missed it. Missed it where he said it at some point, didn't he? Anyway, never mind. So no, it wasn't the multiplex cinema, David. It was just let's have a look. It was just one, there's just one screen. But it's like really posh. And they're like seats for two. Like, it's not for children. It's not a place for children. So you've got your seat where, instead of being individual seats, you've got seats for two with a table in between them. And we had a bottle of champagne. It's posh cinema. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it's the Grosvenor Picture Theatre. Let me show it here. It's this place. There it is. Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, you've got sort of double seats so you can sit together. Got a table in the middle with a little lamp. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. Glasgow's oldest cinema has been lovingly restored to offer a truly unique experience for film lovers, with just two screens featuring soft leather armchairs and sofa-style seats to share. I mean, the actual experience was lovely, just the film was crap. Our cinema is fully licensed too, so don't forget an expertly mixed cocktail or glass of wine to enjoy with your popcorn. And yeah, it's a real nice experience. I would definitely recommend it if you find a good film to go and see. Yeah, but the film, you know, we went to see that 50 Shades of Grey, and just the film wasn't good, which was a shame because the whole experience was fabulous. Yeah, I do, David. I like the high life, the good life. I've just got Woolworth's wages and Harrods taste, so I have to find someone who can keep me in the style to which I'd like to become accustomed. And at that time, I did have someone who was doing that. But anyway, yeah, it was lovely. It was really, really nice experience. I had a nice time in Glasgow, just generally. Now, I like a bit, you know, I like rough places as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a snob. You know, that was lovely. But yeah, I'm quite happy. We went in a rough pub somewhere in Dumbarton or whatever. I like that as well. Do you know what? I'm from Manchester. I can mix with the best or the worst. I enjoy all of it. But yeah, Glasgow's a really vibrant place, isn't it? So it's a very vibrant place, Glasgow. And then my boyfriend at the time, he was from Glasgow. He was actually from Springburn originally. But anyway, sort of moved on from that. But yeah, so he knew the area. So, you know, we went to lots of lovely places in Glasgow and around. We went to St Andrews. I've been a couple of times, but anyway, visited quite a lot of nice places there. Yeah, I've got a little, and of course I'm a quarter Scottish, but I've got a little place in my heart for Scotland. I've had good times there. It's one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen, to be honest. You know, it's very beautiful, isn't it? It's got its problems like everywhere else in the inner cities and everything, but a lot of it is beautiful. And of course, the weather, it rains like mad, doesn't it, all the time? It rained when we went to Edinburgh. I remember that, we went to Edinburgh as well. Poured down with rain. But Edinburgh is fun. But it was good that it rained because it's very atmospheric, isn't it? Edinburgh, you know, we did the Ghost Bus tour. It was right that it was raining. It wouldn't have been right to have been sunny. It was in February as well. Oh, you're out on Saturday for your boys' night out, David. Oh, I wish I was there. You know, it's a very it's a place that's got a good vibe to it, you know, so it's a lovely place. So okay, thank you for watching. Now, especially for those who stuck with me from beginning to end. It was a very long interview, of course, but I personally found it very intriguing. You know, I know there's some of you out there that like me, they like these interview things. I like to hear how the case was all put together. It's fascinating, isn't it? I think it is anyway. I know maybe some people thought it was boring or whatever, or some people don't like the long videos. I know that, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed watching it with you. I enjoyed the commenting on it. And ultimately, it's the lessons that can be learnt from it. You know, to learn that this poor woman with her vulnerabilities, and so many not only women that are vulnerable out there, there's all sorts of people that are vulnerable out there too, and that's what predators like this guy rely on. If it wasn't for vulnerable people, predators just wouldn't ever get anywhere. We wouldn't have true crime channels, would we? Because these predators, they rely on the vulnerability of their victims. You know, for every twonk like this, there's unfortunately a vulnerable person like Elaine. So he should never be forgotten. you know, what he did, he should never be released. I mean, he's smiling on that photo. Do you know what I mean? He's loving it in one way as well, because he probably, this was during his court case, so he was probably never thought he would get found guilty. Do you know what I mean? So he's, you know, he's just like, he's so sort of superior in his own head. He's so superior, but of course he's not superior. He's a twonk. I know. Yeah, he won't be having any more Guinness, will he? Those days are gone, aren't they, Graham? Fucking idiot. Anyway, I hope his wife and his kids are okay. I do think about them as well, because it's sad for them. And of course, think about Elaine's family, her dad, her siblings. It's a shame. But hopefully somebody may learn from Elaine's story, and so it doesn't happen. Yeah, an Undertaker's tea boy, David. Yep, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to go and have some toast. I'm hungry, I'm peckish. So I'm going to go and have some toast. I'm going to put a candle up for Elaine. And you know what? Not only for Elaine, but for any other victims of, you know, these predators. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily come to murder. But, you know, you're talking about a woman, really, she was, you can see from her messages, as the guy said, she was only looking for love. She was looking in the wrong place, and she was wrong, she was mistaken. But do you know what? She, you know, she was vulnerable. Okay, I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, as always, may your God go with you. Thank you and good night. Bye.